Hello, everyone. For this discussion, Roger and I were trying something a little different with our camera equipment in the hopes of bringing you a better product. That turned out to be a horrible, horrible failure. The footage was in fact so bad that to release it would be a disservice to both the veteran and to you, the audience. So, instead of that footage, we have gotten together many more pictures than we normally do, and we'll be using those instead. Remember, here at Tracer Burnout, we are not a slick corporate product. There are no teams of people backing us up. It's just Roger and myself and our guest. If that changes the way that you feel about this particular episode, then by all means, go over to your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or iHeart or Apple Podcasts or whichever, and you can listen to the only audio version there. Thanks for bearing with us as we learn along the way.
Welcome to Tracer Burnout. I'm Roger.
And I'm Dan.
And it's good to be back again. We're doing a double header here, so back-to-back episodes. I hope everybody enjoyed Mr. M2, Mike McCusker's episode. Today we've got another special guest here. We'll introduce him in a minute. Just as a reminder, we have increased our rate of output now, so we've gone from every 3 weeks to every 2 weeks.
Yep. And we are also up on the podcast platforms. So Spotify, iHeart, Apple, and then a whole bunch of others. There's a lot of podcast platforms out there.
Yep.
But we will still be continuing to post the actual videos of the show on YouTube and Rumble so that you can see what these veterans look like, not to mention pictures of their various globe-trotting adventures along the way.
Yeah, so. Perfect. And then again, another great reminder, we'd like to tell everybody about our good friends over at Aerial Resupply Coffee.
Yep.
This is my personal favorite, the Firewatch.
Yes.
You can see it's been opened and is partially consumed.
Yep.
Firewatch is my favorite. I'm a medium roast guy myself, so
yes.
Good to go. You can go over to Aerial Resupply Coffee and use Tracer Burnout as a coupon code to get 10% off. And you can also go to our website at tracerburnout.com and click on the banner up at the top, which is an affiliate link. You can click on that and we'll get credit for that either way. So and enjoy.
It's good coffee without all the gimmicks and chicanery.
Also shenanigans.
And tomfoolery.
Oh.
That often goes with, a lot of product pitches and stuff. It's a veteran-owned business. Great guy. Good coffee.
Give your support, please.
That's the pitch.
Yep.
Okay. So, without further ado, today we're going to be talking to Mr. Will Yeske, paratrooper, author of the book Damn the Valley. We hope you enjoy.
All right, welcome to the show, Will. Great to have you on.
No, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have a fellow paratrooper on here once again.
Boo.
Just slipped in.
Airborne all the way.
Boo.
So we've been asking you to come on for a while, and we really appreciate you taking the time and the effort to come by here because it's not exactly on the way for you. So we do really appreciate that.
It was this time.
Okay, well, we made it work, right?
Yes. It took some coordination, but we got it done.
So multiple texts and messages, but here we are.
Yes, here we are. So we usually start off with a little bit of background. So does your family have a history of service?
There's, so my cousin was in the Marines, and it kind of inspired a little bit of this end of things. I was looking at joining the Marines, coming up to, out of high school. That was always something in the back. But I didn't know this until I had been overseas, and I think I was back on mid-tour during the thing for this. So in, right after Christmas 09, so beginning 010, or 10. My mom brought up a picture because she was like, "Oh yeah, your grandfather on your mom's side, he was a ship operator in World War II in the Pacific Theater." I'm like, "Wait a minute, hold on, what are you talking about?" And she hands me the picture, and it's him with a radio. So he used to talk to the ships and call in the Arty strikes on the island,
which was critical and
Man, talk about he's doing the same job essentially. It's like an RTO with the ships calling in strikes. I'm like, dude, you gotta be kidding me. This is just, and I had no idea.
Dude, that was crazy important during the island hopping.
Yeah. But just to see that and be like, how did I ended up in this same type of operating radio, either calling in medevacs or, whatever we had to at the time. So it was wild to see. So
yeah, that's cool though.
That's neat. Cool. Yeah,
Is
got
there
that heritage built in.
anything further back than that, or other branches of the family?
So what my dad's side was Korea. My uncle did something with planes. I was somewhere around the Vietnam era time. But
Okay.
yeah, no, just miss a match. Like there wasn't anything like solid military service in the family. I was kind of like, other than my cousin, I was the only one out of that generation that signed on the line and went.
What was it that I mean, obviously, your cousin being in the Marines got you interested in the Marines? Was it the commercials? They do have the best commercials.
They do.
Oh my
God, they got great
that's
commercials.
fair. It's fair.
The uniform, and then of course you have all the girls snap to the unit, and they're like, "Oh, the Marines."
It's true. It's true.
It's true.
Hey, paratroopers can recognize excellence elsewhere as well. So,
Begrudgingly, but yes.
yeah.
So then, what made you decide to go into the Army?
I think it was just the fact that I had special forces available, and I knew a little bit more to get me in trouble. And I was like, "Oh, there's a fast track pipeline to there." And little did I know it was really just the airborne infantry's recruiting tool.
So that's a great jump off point. So you enlisted under an 18 X-ray contract.
Yes.
So please explain what an 18 X-ray is, or at least what the pipeline looks like.
So you'll come in. I mean, it's you're going through all the same steps. They're taking you through. They're putting you through basic training. They're putting you through airborne school. I know now they keep changing things up in those courses all the time. Like now, they're not even airborne now during the Q course, are they?
For the X-rays?
I think they got rid of jumping completely for any of the Q course guys. I don't know about for X-rays anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't know.
They just changed that stuff.
It does change.
Yeah,
For a while they were having too many jump injuries, and they're like, because they had to do with MC6s.
Yep.
Give someone something that steers.
So Special Forces 18 series. So if you're going to enlist into the Special Forces, you come in usually as an 18 Bravo, Charlie, Delta, or Echo, which is you assess into one of those MOSs after you've already been in the Army.
The X-ray is unknown.
The X-ray is when you're coming in, using jargon, but you're coming in off the street, right? So you generally have a college education at this point, or at least at least some, and you're coming in to do the 18 X-ray, TBD, whatever your actual MOS is going to be.
You just got to make it through the hoops and then find out what what they slot you into.
So you're going through basic training. So you do one station unit training at Fort Benning. So tell us about that.
That was, we started with 80 some odd people, and I think it was because we actually did have a lot of other 18 X-ray contracts in that particular class. So it was almost like the drill sergeants wanted to dish out a little extra.
I was going to ask about that, yes.
Because we went from 80 some odd kids down to, I think it was 42 was the graduating class. Mm-hmm. And they were all like, who's going to beat that number? Like, and they're all the drill sergeants from the different spots and stuff. It was like this joke in between. We're like, are they kidding? Like, what's going on here?
No.
We really did do that.
Right now. Okay. We really did do that. I graduated a platoon of, starting off at 60, I graduated a platoon of 36.
Good
not including guys that got recycled to us or restarted to us from other units. I was very proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's when someone's like a normal infantry course, like, is it just that you guys are trying to push them harder? Is it the fact that they're calling for more drops?
Sometimes you have better groups of trainees than others. There's usually one platoon that seems to have guys that are just getting hurt or screwing up, or going AWOL, or suicides or what have you, that causes them to get dropped or restarted.
Gotcha.
And just that platoon, just the paperwork seemed to go through a lot faster for me. So,
well, there you go. Take advantage of it. Yeah. See, and I never get to see that end. It's,
oh no, there's something as a trainee, whether that's in basic training or going to any school, where you only see what's immediately in front of you. But then if you then come back as an instructor for that same school environment, you see the entire picture.
Yeah.
And definitely, going through as a trainee and then coming back almost a decade later as a drill. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very different.
Very different.
Your eyes are opened to the...
Yes. Yep. Now, in the book, you actually had a beautiful line, and I laughed my butt off.
He's a sicko,
for quite some time when you talk. It's something like, and then I went to the infantry school at Fort Benning, Georgia. What a fun slice of ridiculousness. It's like, that is perfect. That's absolutely perfect. That is exactly what it is. It is a small slice of the entire army that is just full of ridiculousness.
Absolutely. And the story in there, too. I've had other kids that were there. One in particular, he didn't even know, like, this book just showed up. Mm-hmm. Like, he was like, holy crap, like, I know that guy. And we had gone to basic together. And when he read that story, he comes back and he's just like, dude, that is the story I tell everyone about my experience in basic training. He's like, that is the one, and you nailed it. I'm like, all right. So.
Yep. The infantry school is definitely a fun slice of ridiculousness. Now, the armor school is down there now as well, so I don't know about the armor school.
Okay.
But the infantry school, I am sure.
That's when they changed
still
to like
exactly
more
the same.
Maneuver.
It's the maneuver center of excellence.
Yeah, the maneuver center of excellence.
A little bit of everything.
They moved the armor school from Knox.
It was at Knox
to Harmony Church.
Got it.
So
yeah, they're always moving stuff around.
Oh, of course. But anyway,
renaming things.
But anyway, back to your time in basic training.
Do you have a drill sergeant that stands out in your mind?
That's the obvious one right there. The drill sergeant O from Ranger Regiment. That was just that hard charging. And
you talk about him a lot in the book.
Yeah. That's what he was only there for. The lessons imparted in the short time that he was there, huge, just crazy. And where a lot of people, I think that's where a lot of people, they misunderstand what's going on in basic training and stuff. These beatings keep, the beatings will continue until morale improves kind of thing. And it's not really that. Like they're trying to get people wired tight to be able to do when the job comes to perform.
Yeah.
And it's, you don't see that end when you're in basic training because you're the one going through the suck.
Yeah.
Right. But there's a diminishing return on that, of course. However, there does need to be a steep learning curve when you're trying to build that mental toughness and physical toughness as well. They go hand in hand, but that mental toughness, you can only capture that in a training environment. There's only a handful of ways that you can really hone that in that high stressful environment with what you go through. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, what was the saying? They was just to joke around and say you learn by two ways: repetition and blunt force trauma.
Yep.
Nope.
As you well know.
As I well know, the repetition part. I was never involved in any sort of blunt force trauma.
Allegedly.
Yes. Any possible congressional hearing?
I cannot confirm or deny any 15-6 investigations that were opened in my name.
We oh man, and I didn't even put it in there, but we had one kid who, he had connections, but he had connections that went all the way up to the hill, and of course he snuck out one night and called somebody, and of course the next day we're woken up and they're like, who the hell? Yeah. Like, well, we got a visitor today coming in on a helicopter, so everything better be freaking dressed, and we're like, oh God, what in the
man?
Yep.
Yeah, and the funniest thing is that kid got pulled from our class, and then out of nowhere, he's the pay agent in Afghanistan, like riding around with a suitcase of money and an LT, and I'm like, wait, what in the...
Yes, out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So basic AIT, anything of interest from AIT?
I mean, you got... No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, other than, like, the day one of AIT was, where everybody's talking that whole time, oh, man, AIT's going to be different and everything. I was on, that fire watch that night, and I come around, and I hear the door open, I'm like, all right, it's Drill Sergeant Z coming in. I look over, and he's like, shh. I'm like, oh, God, here we go. And he picks up the metal trash can that's by the door and throws it right into the middle, trash exploding everywhere, and starts screaming, welcome to AIT, It's just, we're in for the same thing. So it was just the same.
It was a trap.
Yeah.
It's a trap.
Same suck.
Yeah.
Don't fall for it.
Yeah,
Don't get your hopes up.
Basic was typically broken up into red, white, and blue phases. And then for AIT, it was broken into black and gold phase. For whatever reason, I'm sure that you can guess. And typically we had some sort of celebration for the trainees to congratulate them on making it to Blackface.
You've made it this far.
From Blueface.
So now you're black and blue.
Yes.
That sounds about right. There's something oddly poetic in that.
Yes.
So, okay, so you make it through AIT with nothing remarkable to speak of.
No.
And then...
On the school falling.
I was going to say, so based on your contract, you stick around Benning for 3 additional weeks. So tell us about Airborne School.
Yeah, and there was a holdover in there too. They did something with the timing where it was messed up. So we had like a cycle, and we lost another few guys due to downtown,
shenanigans.
Yeah, downtown Benning or
Victory Drive,
whatever. Yeah, whatever you want to call it. But yep, bye self-select. See you later. School falling, 3 weeks, jumping out of planes from a guy that's afraid of heights. So that was fun. Yeah, I mean, hey, you look at it and you're like, it's a means to an end. I'm going to have to do this for the job, so you better just get over it. Yeah. Suck it up. Yeah, it's weird. Strangely enough, I can, there's always those height issues, but there's only in certain instances, it's not scary for me to jump out of a plane, weirdly.
It's the adrenaline helps.
Maybe. I'm usually asleep until the doors open, so just like get that last rack.
Or is it because you can't see the ground?
That might be part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't jump out with my eyes shut or anything like that.
Well, no, but I mean, if you're standing on the roof, you can see the ground right there. If you're standing on top of a 4-story building, you can see the ground right there. But if you're staring out of a plane door or window, I mean, it kind of looks like it's right there, but you can't exactly you can't exactly make out blades of grass that you're going to be splattering. So
as the song says,
there's the old adage too that all jumps can be night jumps if your eyes are closed. So yeah.
The scariest one we did was when we got back from Afghanistan. We did a 600.
That's low
with a T10. That was like, I'm like, why are we even jumping with reserves? Like, you gotta be kidding me.
A T10,
yeah, JFX. Like, that was...
I mean, when you're jumping that low, you do your count. If your chute does not open, you pull that reserve. Don't think about it.
Yeah.
You will die.
If there's anything
you will
wrong,
die if you think about it.
Anything wrong, just pull.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so Airborne School. So your time at Benning is wound to a close. So you report to...
So we get onto a bus.
Yep.
And we get trucked up to Bragg. And we get thrown into a day room because it's Friday, and I think it's like 7 o'clock at night, and they're like, sleep on the floor. Mm-hmm. We got nothing for you. So me and one of the guys, I think his name, it was French actually. We went into town and got a hotel for the weekend. All right, let's see what Fayetteville's all about. And, oh my God, what have we gotten ourselves into? And then, and there I was, and then you come in and you start SOPSI, so you get all your stuff given to you, which is your old Vietnam. That was what they had at the time. They didn't have anything Mali over there. I'm like, what is this old freaking? Are you kidding?
Getting your
me?
Alice packs and all.
Yeah.
The old canteen cups and the old FLC loaders and.
Yep. The old Alice clips.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
His pistol belt.
Yep.
Start SOPSI. I mean, SOPSI was fun, but like they again still it was just beating you.
So what's SOPSI?
Special Operations Preparation and Conditioning.
Yeah.
So that's that next step. If you're in the 18X, for your guys' listeners and stuff, if you're in the 18X side of things, you don't have that land nav skill. You haven't been doing all the rucking and stuff. A lot of the X-rays though are really in shape.
Yeah.
They always have that happen to where you have the guys who have been in for a while and they've been beat up over time. There's some of the skills are rusty and stuff, or there's maybe an ego there. That was one of the things I noticed too, is like the ego for some of those guys. You just see them flat on their face, because they're expected, more is expected of them over there. But yeah, SOPSI, run around in the woods with heavy packs. You learn your land nav, you learn whatever else.
Your preparatory course.
Yeah.
Are you mostly at Bragg for this, or are you doing a lot out of Camp McCall?
No, all of it was McCall.
It's all Camp McCall, which is adjacent to Fort Bragg, of course, now Fort Liberty. But.
Yeah, what are you, like an hour? Yeah.
It's about a 45-minute drive. Yeah.
So out at McCall at the compound. I mean, I got hurt during the last week. pulled something in my leg. Still finished the course. Still finished that up. And then was like, hey, like I need to see someone. Something's not right in my left leg. That put me into med holdover. They're like, hey, yeah, you have something going on. You know, I was on crutches. And it was like maybe like 400 some odd people in med hold. There was just, they were breaking people off at the time, but there was like so many people. And the sergeant major just came through and was like, cut them all. You know, and I was like,
And this SOPSI was how many weeks?
3.
3. And then you're in the medical hold for how many weeks?
Oh man, I wasn't even there a week. When
so it was...
Yeah, when this came down, I was just like, wait, hold on, whoa, I'm supposed to be in the next selection class. This has already been discussed. They're leaving tomorrow, and they're like, well, if you're going to stay, freaking go. And I'm like, I can't.
Yeah. So you said that there were hundreds of people in the hold.
Mm-hmm.
How long had some of them been there?
You've seen it before. There's people that have camped out.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, like there was like, I'm like, man, what is this room all about? They're in, you know, those old, what was the Korean War style barracks and stuff where they had the group rooms, and some of those places like straight up had like hooches and stuff. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
So some of them had been there for weeks and months even.
Months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's lay out the timeline. So at this point, so everybody listening also knows, you haven't been through assessment and selection yet.
Nope.
So part of the 18 X-ray contract is you do everything you've done to this point. So that's OSUT training so all the infantry training, you go to airborne school, you get airborne qualified, and then you go to assessment and selection.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get selected, then what happens?
Needs of the Army.
Needs of the Army. And what does that generally mean if you're an 18 X-ray at Fort Bragg, North Carolina?
82nd Airborne,
82nd
baby.
Airborne Division.
Yeah. I mean, why truck them all over the States when you have them right there? They're already airborne qualified.
And their stuff's all there already. It's very cost effective. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens next?
So that's, so we ended up, this was December 2009. And it took them a little bit of time to which was really weird because I think I left, because I remember the Halloween, there's another Halloween incident. There was I'm just going to leave it at Sergeant P there.
Sergeant P.
There was 2 of them. There was S and P. And those 2 guys were just maniacal, like just nasty people. They dragged them all out during Halloween, and they had these kids doing like what they would do out in McCall in the rubber pit and stuff. They were doing it out in front of the building, but it was this guy's kid, 6-year-old kid giving out the commands, and he's up there drunker than a skunk laughing about it. And I'm just like, dude, this is bull.
Yeah. That kind of stuff doesn't go on as much as it used to anyway. I'm not naive enough to say it never happens, but not like it used to.
There's like a slice of era in there to where there was some of that going on to where they want to hold, they are like turn either blind eye or, and let's like not talk about those years. Yeah. It's like, hey, this stuff happened.
Yeah.
I got it. Learn from it. Be better.
Yeah.
But so it ended up December. So ended up they were at the Christmas ball. Actually, it wasn't Christmas, but it was coming up to their block leave, and or they had just gotten off their block leave. I can't remember exactly what it was. But met the first sergeant. First sergeant wants to see everybody. So you're like sitting around all day. 1st Brigade Battalion,
mm-hmm.
and you're at the company sitting there, and he comes in. Good to meet you. This and that. All right. See you. Freaking training starts Monday. Like, okay. That's it? Like, what's going on? We sign in, and sure enough, ITC cycle starts on Monday, and it was, that went for, 3 months of that, then JRTC, and then Afghanistan.
So, so it was very quick that you were released from, what we just say, SWCS, Special Warfare Center in school. I mean...
Yeah, it's about a month, I would say, for orders, and then moved over.
Okay, that's faster than I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
But then you get your orders to report to Gavin Hall.
Wow,
Anyways,
no, this was like direct to 4th Brigade.
Okay, so in the old days, Gavin Hall was the division headquarters, where people would always report, but you went straight. Had a pinpoint assignment to 4th Brigade.
Straight to 4th Brigade.
Got it.
Yeah, they knew.
Plussing up before the deployment.
Yeah, understood. Okay, so you show up for ITC on that following Monday.
Yep.
What does that look like?
That was, we ended up with CIF and then ended up jumping on an LMTV and joining the guys out in the field. And it was, So it was cold. Yeah, it was really cold. We had a few kids go down with hypothermia during that and everything else. But one of the things that I kind of noticed that was a little different over there is we always had like our battalion leadership and stuff. They were always out there with us. Mm-hmm. Like, and I kind of started looking around and seeing like the other. I'm like, oh, like I don't see any of the other. I don't hear about any of the other battalions and stuff doing this sort of thing. And our company as well too. Like our battalion sergeant major was very, I guess, in the Bravo company. You know, a lot of focus went towards us, and that had to do with our first sergeant, and it had to do with the fact that our first sergeant, like, really, he was wound tight, but he upheld the standards. He was an old guard guy, so back in garrison, you know, he was all about those uniform standards, mm-hmm. the stupid stuff that were like, but it starts instilling that, hey, details matter, that small things do matter.
Mm-hmm. The little things add up.
Yeah, and it translates over to that end, like, in the field, and then when you're overseas, too, that constant preaching of hard right over easy wrong.
Yeah,
that's right.
You know, it's that sort of thing is like, those are the things that matter.
Yeah.
When it really starts going down, is like, what are you resorting to falling back on your programming and stuff?
Yeah, that muscle memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you do your training cycle. You say, how long did you say it was?
That one, so ITC was about 3 months.
About 90 days, yeah.
Really what happened was that it was just constant training up until we left. So get there in December, you know, January, February, March, you know, and it just went, and then September, what is about a month beforehand, and then it's, all right, our orders are cut for Afghanistan, we're leaving, you're doing the, you know, getting green on all your medical and everything else. And
doing all your SRP stuff.
Yeah.
So you're a rifleman in an infantry squad.
Machine gunner.
You start as a machine gunner. That's right.
Course.
That's right. Because that was the same for you. Usually the new guys are the machine gunners. Yeah, that's
carry the weight.
Either that or the AG. One or the other, right? So
yes.
Okay, so you're in an infantry squad.
Saw gunner. Yep.
Carrying one of the big guns.
And then after your training cycle, you of course went to the prove it phase, and went down to the Joint Readiness Training Center. In Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Somewhere you're very familiar with.
It's lovely.
Extraordinarily familiar.
It's a sportsman's paradise. Come on.
With Fort Polk.
There was a video up there of two guys sitting there, like, as I'm recovering all this stuff that came forward from the book and everything, and I'm looking through all the media and the pictures and the videos and stuff, and there's a video with two guys, and it was just the funniest thing is the both of them staring into a wood line, and they look back into the camera and they're like, this is what we're doing. And then just pans back to the wood line.
Like, guarding the trees.
Is this just JRTC 100%?
So when you got to Polk for the training exercise, your prove it phase of, you know, the culmination of your training, saying, you know, you're blessed off to
certification
to deploy.
Yeah.
What was the mission focus of your time there at Polk?
So a lot of what they focused on, we were supposed to head to Iraq. So that's what I was getting towards. Okay. Yeah. So I guess I read it perfectly then.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were supposed to head to Iraq, and that's everything we trained for. It was building, clearing. A lot of the squad live fires, they just hammered down on that, doubled, tripled down on that. They were very aggressive. And then, you know, executive orders come down from President Obama. Hey, we're having a surge into Afghanistan. Kandahar, I don't know if Kandahar was like it had to be in the works somewhere, but that's essentially what we ended up finding ourselves in. But we had orders, cut, hey, 4th Brigade is going to Afghanistan. I guess it's just because we were the next out.
That was while you were at Polk, or it was, you know...
Oh, I'm not sure.
After you got back. But, okay, well, at some time.
We became aware after we got back.
But while you guys were at JRTC, you were still planning operations like you were going to Iraq.
Yes.
So you were running a lot of operations outside of the FOBs on Polk.
Yep.
And then, you know, basically doing turn and burns. You'd go out, you'd run an op, and then you'd come back to the FOB where there's a chow hall, and, you know, you've got all the showers and, you know, electricity and everything like that, and everything is already set up because Iraq was a far more industrialized nation than Afghanistan.
Yeah, it was more set up like that.
Yeah.
I know we were in the far reaches out at Polk, but...
Tigerland.
Yeah. So, but you guys finish up your operations there, and then 30, 60 days after you guys got back, you guys are headed to Iraq.
Yeah. Afghanistan.
Or, well, Afghanistan rather than Iraq.
Rather than Iraq. Yep. And that was, I mean, we started getting back stuff because we had ADMON,
Yep.
you know, the advance party leave a month prior, and they're already in Helmand province, and they're just like, they're sending stuff back. Like, guys, we already got in a firefight. Like, holy crap, you should have been there. We were over watching something with Marja, and the Marines had planes coming in, and it was freaking nuts. Like, this is going to be crazy. And we're all like, yo, okay, this is actually happening. Okay. We're actually going to get a kinetic deployment. We show up, nothing.
So you fly through Kyrgyzstan?
Yeah.
So you land in Manas Air Base, Air Force Base, and then fly into, was it CAF or BAF?
Well, we flew into CAF.
So CAF, Kandahar Airfield.
Unload onto the tent city out there.
Yep.
And then it's, they start working all the logistical to get us out to, and I'm trying to remember if we flew out to Lash. I think we flew out to Lash, and then we took over the stuff that the National Guard had out there. Because I know there was a Connex, I know there was some stuff. But yeah, I mean, as soon as we showed up, it was kind of weird from the very start on how we were apart. Because 1st Platoon and 3rd Platoon, we got moved out to a separate Afghan, there was an Afghan police compound. I think that one, there's one of this that was labeled the ANCOP, there was another that was labeled the ANCD. There's so many different acronyms and names, but it was basically, we ended up in an Afghan police compound.
Yeah, I mean, there was the National Police, there was the Civilian Patrol, there was the Regional Police Force, and then on occasion you would get the Town Police, which was really just the local strongmans,
local mafia.
I mean, that was the reason why the ANP, the Afghan National Police, was stood up as it was because they wanted to pull people from elsewhere in the country because they didn't want the local homeboys running everything. Because I mean, by definition, everything where it was so tribal. Yeah.
Well, that's where, you as your CA background see that whole thing to where it's like, no, you don't want that. You don't want somebody in power that's there manipulating and has been there.
Who will police the police?
And there's already, Afghanistan was so corrupt to begin with. The contractors you're dealing with and just everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we ended up out of Lashkar in a separate compound while headquarters and 2nd Platoon stayed back with the Brits. So it was like everybody ended up with their own separate platoon-oriented...
Like a sector, yep.
Yeah. Ours was driving up and down the highway doing training missions with the police, and it was like the most boring, like hurry up and wait, like everything typical you see in that movie deployment of like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? Are we shooting?
But during those training missions, what were you training them on, or what were you trying to increase their proficiency with?
A lot of it was the same stuff like that we've been just trained in. It was just like give them something to do, So it was like, all right, we're going to teach them CQB and squad attack.
Yeah, patrolling basics and squad attack and
And a lot of the stuff, a lot of the new guys like us, we would find ourselves a lot of the time just up in the trucks. Hey, watch the stuff. You're going to sit on outer cordon and pull security while we, are doing stuff on the inside. And that's where, that sit down that happens in the book to where the platoon sergeant sits down with the police chief, and the police chief, they're sitting down for dinner and he offers them his chai boy for the night. And he's just like, what?
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're out of here. Like, I'm not staying around for this. But facing those different instances out there and facing that end of the cultural stuff and being frustrated to like, hey, here we are, we're rolling up and down this highway, nothing's happening out here. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Our mission was to do this, and you find yourself doing something completely different. But that's just the name of the game. That's how I looked at it. Like, okay, like either something will pop off, and something eventually did. It was of course when you least expect it.
Right. Do you think that first contact or the heavy stuff was made worse because of a possibility that y'all were lulled into some kind of complacency because of the boredom, or were you truly prepared for it when it happened?
So, oh man, the way that happened, it couldn't have happened more. It was really the Afghan police were the ones who got complacent first.
Yeah.
We were heading down that road. You could definitely see the signs of like, all right, that freaking gunner number 2 truck there, he looks like he's nodding off. and stuff like that. Yeah, the guys in the back seats are falling asleep. Nobody's, they all start to just take things for granted. So as the Afghan police that were out in front, we were always operating with them, and they're out in their little Hilux in front, and they're just like, hey, we're about a mile out. Peace, guys.
Yeah.
And we're like, all right, let them go. We're going to still do our job, methodically clear every culvert, because anytime that we didn't, or anytime that we found ourselves saying like, hey, maybe we just get by, we would always find something.
Of course.
Yeah, you stressed that in the book too, the culverts. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, that became something like later on too.
Okay. Before we get too much further, let me ask, from basic training to SOPC to your initial training with the 82nd, and then your time at JRTC, and then that very brief time before your deployment, did you get any sort of cultural familiarity classes at first in Iraq, and then once you guys found out your mission had changed to Afghanistan, anything to obviously by that point you had guys that had previous deployments to both Iraq and Afghanistan within the unit.
Oh yeah.
But was there any sort of briefing, PowerPoint presentation, anything to prepare guys for a change in culture that, most of them had never even heard of before, really?
Yeah.
The differences. And did you get anything like that?
So I'm trying to remember exactly, like the amount of was so minimal. Now that you're saying, now I'm like trying to think of the PowerPoint end of things. So I'm like, there had to have been a PowerPoint, because I know there was a pamphlet. We got a pamphlet with stuff like saying, all right, these are common words and this is the phonetic
we call it a pointy talkie. Is what.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. Yep. You have a few things on there. Most of it would come through from the guys, that have been overseas prior.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those sentiments, though, and everything I say it in there, they're already building in that whole looking at humanity different. They're, as what happens a lot of times in a conflict and stuff, you're dehumanizing the people.
Very cynical.
Yeah. And that was, I noticed a lot of them, that's what they refer to them as savages, and it's just like, freaking those savages and stuff over there. And I was just like, what went through my head was, man, like, what did I sign up for? Like, is this actually how it is over there? Like, where's this disgust coming from? And I couldn't really process that end. I guess I had never really, I'd never been in a firefight against them. I'd never seen, had someone bleed out my arms before, or anything like that. So I couldn't relate to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this dehumanization, and like, did I actually just sign up for Colonel Custer's long lost paratrooper brigade? What did I just get myself into? So yeah, there was things that were said, but it was always like that negative connotation and stuff.
So there wasn't really any sort of formal training or briefing, but it was just maybe some lessons learned from guys that did have experience, whether positive or negative.
Yeah, most of that is just things passed along. It's not like when later on and stuff you're taught the cultural classes and the stuff that they do over on the SWIC kind of things, or special operations when they start, hey, this is your area study for whatever particular nation or where you're going. Very different. It was almost just like that super PowerPoint light. And then some.
So it was, for you and a bunch of the other new guys, it was a fairly big culture shock.
Oh yeah.
Because even though you had heard, the other NCOs and officers maybe within your platoon, company, battalion talking about their previous experiences, nothing prepares you for seeing it for yourself.
Well, you have to look at too is even those guys, in E5, NCO that's been deployed already. Some of them too were really, the ranks were low for the experience that we had. Some of those guys should have been 6s and stuff. We had a really heavy NCO structure there. But they're still young. Still extremely young. You're talking about 21, 22-year-old E5s. I was, 28 at the time going into Afghanistan. But a lot of these guys out there, your privates and stuff, 18, 19.
Mm-hmm.
And for that type of culture shock or shift so rapidly like that, I could definitely see where, that's problematic. And it could be problematic for sure. They don't understand what's going on over there, like what's happening. It's so much coming in at once.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they went through the Mod Village training area and stuff that you guys do.
Okay. Yep, I was just curious.
So, first firefight, pucker factor 5, right?
No, not at all. Actually, a lot less than I had thought.
It was a letdown.
I would leave. Well, number one, I was driving a truck.
Yep.
You know, so I mean, we were second truck, and all the trucks were dual mounted. So I mean, our truck had a Mark 19 and a 240, and the way that we came up on this, and this is kind of like neat with. So the book launch came out on Halloween. That was actually our first firefight. Was also Halloween. It was kind of cool on how all that worked.
Totally planned that.
All right. It was almost, I mean, the universe like sort of just came out and was like, hey, you know what? Book launches are on Tuesday. Halloween's on a Tuesday this year. And I was like, it's got to be this year, man. Like, now I have to do this. You know, but yeah, I mean, it was just very for me, like thinking about what firefights are in the movies, and everything's going off around you and stuff. You're just hearing some zips and some pings, and you're like, oh crap, we're in a firefight.
What was that?
Yeah. Well, it was mainly going off of what the gunner was saying, you
Yeah.
know, because in the truck, you know, it's loud, it's a Humvee, there's everything packed in there. Yeah, we were still running Humvees at this point. This is right around the time when they started having the MATVs come in. And we had a Max Pro in front of us as the lead vehicle. Mm-hmm. And they, as soon as they started taking fire, they stopped. So they, you know, and just come to a halt. And we couldn't get anything traversed past where that village was right there. So we're on this like higher road, and we didn't have any field of fire. And that's when I go to the LT in the passenger seat, like, hey, I need to get around this guy, get us out before we can get the gun up. You know, oh, just don't get us killed. Okay. Yeah, sure, that's what I'm trying to do. But we're coming by. And as I'm coming by the Max Pro, I'm sort of like, you know, watching up. Hey, Kohler, don't shoot. You know, and we're coming by, and I see the gunner in the turret thing, and because we're on a raised road, and this is a Max Pro, so he's already elevated. Mm-hmm. The enemy has been bounding up using the village as cover, and this guy comes around the corner, and he's like right there, and the gunner can't traverse the gun down enough, and he gets thrown a saw. You know, so a 249 from underneath from
squad
one of the
automatic
scouts.
weapon. Yep.
Yeah, and he jumps into this turret and like smokes two of them right there, and I'm just like, what in the heck? Like, I've heard, you know, you always hear these stories of people getting the adrenaline thumping and everything, superhuman things, but you never think you're going to see something like that, and you're just like, whoa, you know. And then we come around and it goes into, you know, Kohler gets on the Mark 19 and we start pounding the wood line. So these guys were actually, they had a support by fire, you know, and they were using the support by fire with a squad size element bounding up on this particular truck that had gone out in front of us. So these Afghans had just DD out, assuming they were going to be home early, you know, and it was maybe a quarter mile away, but you could literally see, I'm sure the outpost could hear the firefight happening. But yeah, I mean, we came through, we rolled right through, guys dismounted, trucks as support by fire, and it just, bam, 1, 2, 3, rolled right through L-shaped ambush, and, you know, it was over quick.
Yeah.
Maybe half an hour, like, as we're doing everything, and pick up a few of the bodies, throw them in the trunk of one of the Humvees. All right, that's good enough. You know, I'm trying to get back home because we were at the end of I think it was like a 5-day or something like that. So we just wanted to get back to the house.
Seeing as how you guys were so close to the outpost, did any help come from the outpost?
No. Like, so
I figured I'd ask.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, so we're so far out down this highway, we don't have comms with the Afghans. Like, there's nothing coming from there. And we couldn't even reach back into Laskargao where the main element was. So our RTO gun on the SAT-CAN, you know, and that's how they found it, between that and TAC-CHAT. And TAC-CHAT, it was like brand new. And I think it was our platoon sergeant that actually sent that up. Hey, in contact at grid. You know, I think after everything was over, like helicopters came around, did a sweep and everything, but it was all done by that point.
Yeah. Too little, too late.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the same time, I mean, it was, hey, you know, everybody came through it. Nobody, Everybody's unscathed on our end, which is crazy. You know, I mean, again, like there was one of the guys had a tear in his helmet cover, like supposed skip, and another one hole right in the armpit, which was weird because that was the one where he was, you know, it's like, how the heck, just strange. Yeah. Combat things.
So you get that adrenaline rush off that first one. So everybody, you get back to the fob, then what?
That was so that night we had to drop off. I can't remember if we just had to drop off or link up or something like that. And that was at the main fob with the Brits. So they had burgers and dogs and some stuff, and some guys were joking around. That was Carnegie and Cope dressed up like pirates for Halloween. Someone found a mop. You know, of course, I don't know where they found this stuff, but you know,
don't ask.
Two sailors, pirates of the whatever, the pirates of Helmand.
But I mean, you guys had been in contact just, you know, a few hours before this.
Yeah.
But was there? Gosh, what's the word I'm looking for?
There was no reflection.
None.
Like it was
None
just
at all. Like there wasn't even anything to decompress from. Just nobody really took it too seriously.
They just told war stories around the fire. You know, like there was some of the other platoons like, "Whoa, what happened out there?" Like, and it was, "Oh man, you freaking this and that and the other thing," and told the stories, and then it was, "All right, we're going back to our hooch over here." You know, went back over there, and it was just continue business as usual. But at that point, that was where, you know, our battalion commander found us the mission down in the Argonauts, you know, and that's where, all right, guys, we're loading up and we're heading out.
So displace, move down.
So at the time you guys got the word to move down to Argonauts, how long had you been in country?
Well, let's see, September, and then we're going over to. So, I mean, you know how it goes. We got there in September, and then it's, you know, you're at least 3 weeks before you're getting anywhere. You know, then we were there for a little while. It's October, November. I think we had Thanksgiving. So, yeah, I do remember we had Thanksgiving in Lash, and not too much longer after that. I think it was like a week or so after that. We were packing up and headed up to, I think it was Walton, Fob Walton. It was either Walton or Wilson. I know, this is.
So you'd been in country for a couple of months before change of mission.
Yeah, at least 2.
Yeah. Okay. What did you know going into the Argonauts?
Absolutely nothing.
Like, I mean, obviously you knew what unit where you were going to replace, but you had no idea of like, okay, this is the change of mission. We're not going to be training A&P anymore or local police. We're going to be doing, you know, seek and destroy.
No, it wasn't seek and destroy. We were told, deny enemy movement and, presence patrols throughout.
The presence patrols.
Exactly. Yeah, but when you're replacing, so what is it? And I always get this wrong, so I'm going to try to get it right this time. I think it was 5th Brigade. No, maybe it was 2nd. Oh my God. It's 117 Strikers that we replaced. But like we knew that they had been rendered combat ineffective. I was on the left seat, right seat to where, you know, you go out on a patrol with your leadership and their leadership to show you, all right, this is what's what out here.
Yeah, here's the lay of the land. Yeah.
They were terrified. I mean, just moving any sort of amount, it was like tedious. It was so slow. And we literally watched them, you know, call in 2 Kiowas on 2 guys that were digging in the river. And we're like, what the heck was that for?
What do you know what had rendered them combat ineffective to the point where they needed to be moved out?
I mean, it was just the fact of they kept trying to move through the valley mounted, you know, and it was, you could not move anything through.
It wasn't a casualty rate thing. It wasn't a leadership issue.
I mean, it would have been correlated.
I mean,
yeah, I think there was a lot of things going there. I mean, you have the fact of you said seek and destroy before, you know, and that was not meant. We were going into a counterinsurgency,
which is not a tactical task, by the way. It's not. Neither is presence patrol, but we did it for 20 years, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, they were running counter guerrilla type operations and stuff out of there, and that was Colonel Harry Tennell. And I mean, you can read all about him. Just type in the name. I think the major article you find out there is Colonel Harry Tennell's Ill-Fated Striker Brigade is the big one. But I mean, it's just the fact of they didn't learn the lessons. If you look at history, if you look at the Argonaut Valley, if you look at when the Russians went in with BMPs, what does a striker look like?
It looks exactly like a BMP.
Yeah, it's a modern day BMP.
Yeah.
So I mean, what are you going to do when the Russians lost an entire, I want to say it was a brigade element down in there. But I mean, yeah, you can look at history. Like, it's in the book project and stuff, and going back and looking. I was tapping stuff off of my old sergeant major. Hey, like, did you guys? And he was, oh yeah, I read that. And the thing that he read was actual journal entries from a British. I think it was the unit historian and stuff in there, but this goes way back. I want to say 1880, and these are journal entries about Pierre-Pomal, which was the village that was just north of Cap Ware.
Yeah,
right
the British had a
underneath.
great time in Afghanistan. Great time.
Alexander the
empires, huh?
Great. Then the British, then the Russians. Like, when and now we're here. How pompous are we to think like the changes and stuff in that valley?
The Macedonians didn't even want to fool with it. They just ran out of there with their tail between their legs and called it a victory and kept going, east.
If you write it in the book, right?
Yeah. Jeez.
Okay. So you guys hit the ground, do your rip.
Relief in place.
Yes.
And
relief in place.
I mean, it was we established Cap Ware. That was, we came into the valley off of Cop Johnston, which is where we ultimately ended up in the end there. And I think that was the, I guess, sharing of, it got really, like the losses start stacking up.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, let's move first platoon over here. We're going to take second platoon from Cop Johnston. But we ended up moving through, clearing what became Cap Ware. That was, in December? So early December. And then took our first KIA December 26th. And that was Specialist Jason Johnston while we were out on patrol.
When you guys had completed the rip and the previous unit moved out and you guys were fully in control, did you guys know immediately, like, we're going to change this up and we're going to do this differently? Or did you guys initially start trying to do things somewhat similar to the way they were doing them?
There was no question as to, they immediately came in and they're like, we are not rolling through this valley in vehicles. There is no, that was the smartest thing they could have done. Like, we are going light everywhere. And I mean, that's even coming up to establishing where was, that was, everything was in the back at Cop Johnston. We rucked in, we expected heavy resistance. So we came in with assault packs. I think the warmest thing we had in there was no snivel gear. We had a whoopee. And that was it. It was roll in and hold this place. And I think we were there for 3 days before any water resupply came in, and then it was all right, and then we're gonna get some food. So there was guys eating like radishes out of the ground, and it was austere at best.
Yeesh.
At one point, I don't know if it was a Hemet that came in or something. Something came in with HESCO barriers. Something actually came down there, came through with HESCO barriers, but we didn't have any earth movers. We had no contractors. There's nothing. So we put up, and you could see it in some of the pictures. Matter of fact, even in the book, the HESCOs are just flapping in the wind. There's nothing in them. So there's no security, and these things are actually just impeding view.
It's all downside and no upsides.
Yeah. using vehicles, once they brought the vehicles in, they just stayed. They stayed as guard towers in the corners.
Yeah.
Cap Ware was... that was not a fun place to establish it, and it was just constant work parties 24/7.
Yeah.
Always. There at one point, the first sergeant had guys out there with e-tools, shoveling dirt and these things. I think it was it took them 3 days to fill a HESCO, and they're just like, what are you doing to us?
Yeah. That's a lot of squeeze for a very little amount of juice.
Yes. At what point did you realize, or did, I guess, the collective group, did it dawn on them, oh crap, this is not going to be at all like our previous mission? training the A&P? Because I mean, you guys had a little scuffle previously, relatively unfazed by it in just on Halloween, and now not that much longer or not that much later. Holy crap!
Oh yeah, no, I mean you could tell from the very start, but as far as like the really big holy crap is taking that first casualty. That's a patrol where we're out there. You're in Afghanistan. Christmas was just the day prior. I'm just out here doing the same thing, out here patrolling. And this particular mission, there's hey, there's a bomb maker's house that we need Overwatch on. In this particular compound, I stepped right over the charge that ended up initiating the one that, where we took our casualty. So I could draw you a picture at some point, or maybe even I should send you guys the picture of the particular compound. But you have your hard building, and it's compounded off with some walls around there, and then you have the outer orchard from that end too. And we're coming into that inner portion, and there's a concrete slab, and I come in, EOD cleared it, a guy with a metal detector cleared it, come straight across, and I come over, and I'm setting up my long whip, and I'm watching, the alpha team of the squad had already come in and set up, and there was Bravo team was coming in, and two guys, which was Specialist Johnson and Specialist Will Ross, were traversing the wall. One of the guys was actually holding a stick, helping him, kind of one of the guys stabilize because he had the AG bag on, and they're going up to get Overwatch onto the roof and set everything in. And that's when, as I'm looking back, Private Towery takes this step, and it must have just, it was initiated by the step, so it must have just been like the smallest amount off of what we had all just stepped over. It was only a matter of time until somebody hit this thing. And that one is the one that, it took his leg, but initiated the larger one that was within the wall. And that was one of those huge jugs, it's like 500 pounds of HME sitting up in this wall.
Homemade explosives, yeah.
Yeah. And this was meant to, like, in going back and in reprocessing everything through here and talking to EOD guys and stuff, and kind of finding that if Johnston wasn't where he was, because he was directly on top of the main charge, that was meant to be a squad killer.
Yeah.
And really, like, where he was, if he hadn't have been right on top of where he was, it would have been a totally different end state there.
Yeah.
And it would have been really different. A lot of other guys could have been killed in that as well. That thing was huge. You see the shockwave kind of cross the grass, and then you're just covered in dust. And it was like, you have that radio, and I had already sent up a frontline trace, but it was, I didn't even go into the full 9 line. I was just like, hey, you have my frontline trace. I know we have urgent surgical, at least one, probably more, like, stand by.
Yep.
And that's, move to find the LT. Is he still around? And we all meet up kind of at the casualty. The first casualty, which was Towery, because he's down on the ground there. The whole other team was knocked to the ground. The squad leader was actually, he was like right there, and he was a big guy. So there was Sergeant Alan Thomas. He's like a 250-pound black guy, just a barrel of a man.
Solid muscle. Yep.
Oh, man. And he was thrown backwards. He flattened Doc. He flattened a bunch of the other guys. And they're all disoriented. And we meet up at Towery, and Doc is like, he's peppered in the face. He's working half blind on him. And I go to the LT. I'm like, hey, they know where we're at. They know we took casualties. Like, what do you want me to do here? I had been trained in EMT before leaving too. It was myself and one of the other guys had been trained as EMTs, and he's like, look, you've already spun it up. I'll take the radio, freaking get on the EMT stuff, get on helping Doc. And that's what I did. I went into actions on with Towery, checking him over. He was missing some fingers and stuff. And that was actually one of the things to, like, keep him engaged and talking.
Yeah.
And I held up my own. I was like,
you mentioned that in there.
Yeah, welcome to the club. And he's just like, he just starts laughing, and
is he in shock yet?
You know, we never really I want to say yes.
Probably.
He had to have been.
That would be my guess, yeah.
But they were saying that he was joking around the same way with the Sergeant Major back at Roll 3 in CAF. As he was,
maybe he's just a weirdo, you know.
I mean, when you ask the Sergeant Major for a peg leg, and everybody in the room kind of looks at him like, "What in the? Is this kid just hopped up on drugs?" You know, and the nurses there looked at him and they're like, "He's not on anything." Okay. But that moved into, you know, we're hearing across the wall. You know, we're hearing the screams start to happen. And then I hear Ross over there, "Hey, need someone out here." And that was one of the biggest things with the book, and realizing that, like, there was portions there to where I didn't see. There was gaps.
The gaps were filled, yeah.
And having to talk to other people. And that's really where it came into something to where it became the project that it did was, you know, I had the book deal from my own recollections and stuff before, but I don't think it was anything into what it became until everybody started talking there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, Will was on the other side of the wall, and he's, you know, that right there, to have something like that happen to where you're caught right in the middle of an IED. This is, you know, their first IED as well, and he gets punched over this wall, and the things going through his head was, you know, there's a complex ambush coming.
Right.
Like, and I'm out here all alone. That right there is terrifying. And then coming across, there's your buddy who's just on the wall with you, still conscious, you know, with his innards spilling out, basically. Yeah. To have to go through that, and then, you know, we're hearing this from the inside, and just the massive confusion of everything going on. That's a far cry different from everything that had happened in Helmand. Yeah. You know, you go from something to where you were able to be effective to feeling completely helpless, to like, there's nothing we're going to do to save this guy. What kind of fight are we into now? Because later that night, as you're kind of AARing it and you're going through your head, like, what could I have done better out there? What are we going to face tomorrow? Because we have to go right back out there.
Yep.
You know, is the rest of this valley full of this? Is this now the fight? You know, are we fighting ghosts? There was a definite shift.
Yeah. How did, after you guys took your first casualties, how did the unit, maybe just one leader specifically, how did they handle holding you guys together? Because, I mean, obviously these are guys you've trained with, you've deployed with, you've been through, you know, you drank beers with them, you know their wives, you know their kids, you know, these are guys you know.
Yeah.
And now they're gone. How did the unit handle keeping you guys together?
Quite honestly, they just doubled down on work. Like, we were so busy to the point to where you couldn't think about it. You know, that night, you know, you have some of the guys and stuff, like, I mean, Doc broke down, you have some of the other guys broke down in the hooch, and whatnot, but that was the extent of it. Like, that was it. You know, after that, we were so busy. There's portions, and I talked about it with a lot of the guys, because they're like, man, there's not really a lot of cop wear in this book. And I'm like, because there's not a lot of cop wear up here. It was so busy, and you were either on guard duty, you were doing base improvements, or you were out on patrol. And because I was the RTO, I was usually out on patrol.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's actually, I preferred it that way. I liked doing that end of things. You know, and that was more on the end of, I wanted to be an 18 Echo, which is the Special Forces radio guy anyway, and that's why I pivoted to the radio. I wanted the job. Nobody else there wanted the job. Nobody ever wants to be the RTO.
Yeah.
And I was like, I looked at it very differently, because I was like, this is a modern day battlefield. Like, the radio, that right there, number one, I get to see situation overview. I get to sit in on these briefs. I get to either, you know, hear information coming in or send information out. Like, that's what's up. That's what I want.
The majority of the information passes through you.
Yeah.
And the only downsides are really the weight of the pack, and that giant antenna is a big target. And I mean, it's not. It's not like it's a. I mean,
the short whip's not that short.
The long whip is, you know, maybe as big as your pinky, getting a little bit thinner towards the top. but it's very visible. You could be in a forest of bamboo and you'd still be able to spot a long whip. And a short whip, like Roger said, is not
It ain't
that
that short.
No. And this thing, I mean, like, so because of the amount of iron ore in the walls, we already had issues with stuff in the soil.
Yep.
You know, and then you have orchard after orchard after orchard. So you're breaking up your RF signals. You had to put the full 15 feet up if you were going to reach out to anywhere.
Yep.
And it was just, like you said, they noticed. Because we'd come into places, and the interpreter told me at one point, he was like, they're aiming for you, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, you got the radio. They think you're the commander. And I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, you should hear everything we have coming across on this. Like, because they have little icons and stuff, and our interpreter would listen. And he's like, yeah, they want you, buddy. I was like, oh, that's
like I said, it is a small thing, but it is a big target.
Blessing and a curse.
I carried a radio in my separate life as a fire support officer.
There you go. So
I do. We got to carry mortar rounds too.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, I mean the mortars were with the command team.
Fun. See, I didn't mind the weight. It wasn't so bad for me coming from being a saw gunner. And I always rolled out. I rolled heavy. I rolled with 1,200 rounds all the time. Like, people are just like, what? Like, kids these days, I think they only carry 8. I'm just like, nah, man. You're going to want that in a firefight.
Yeah. All right, so the command philosophy for coping with this was keep the mind in shock and the body moving.
Double down,
Yeah. You have to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, I get it.
I definitely think they did the right thing, the right answer and stuff, for sure.
I've got a question. I don't know how to frame it, but go ahead, Rich.
I have a question about something that you mentioned in here. It's not nearly as heavy as some of the other. There's a part where you set up an OP, an observation post on one of the mountains.
165.
And I believe it was thermals, not night vision, that you're describing in here, and something big.
You're talking about the bear?
I am talking about the bear. Tell us the bear story.
Okay, yeah. So, and that's part of the, you had to have that out in the Argonne. We didn't have, they had some ISR, so drones and stuff. They had some, but it's nowhere near what they are these days with everything going on.
Yeah.
So we had an OP sitting on the mountaintop up there looking over, and they had thermals and they had a javelin and whatnot. But it wasn't just, the humans we were fighting out there. There was also... you have livestock. Man, we had a mountain lion, like a straight up mountain lion.
I was going to ask that one too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we have this, one of the other guys, and it's just funny, he's a Puerto Rican guy, Hector Trujillo. And he's like, hey, Meyer, wake up. What's going on? We have a jelly bean. What? There is a jelly bean on the thermals, a jelly bean. Let me see those. And he brings it up and says, what the? And it was an Afghan bear following the patrol out there, like just kind of like skulking around. And they were like, whoa, they call up and they're like, hey guys, stop movement. And this thing just kind of moseyed on by. It just went wherever you wanted to. And you're just like, what are you guys talking about? You go back later and someone had actually taken a picture of the footage. And sure enough, like straight up bears, mountain lions.
Yeah. The mountain lion got close.
Real close. And that's not the only time
it went across the field
up.
of view, right? Didn't it?
Yeah, so Morton, another time they were sitting up on the OP. Again, it's usually cold, wet, rainy. They'll have one guy on guard, one guy right next to him, and then the other two down bottom. And he's, trying to tap Ackers, which is next to him, and he can't get him. And there's this mountain lion, like, right there, and he used to hunt. And this thing, he's like, this thing is huge, man. Like, maybe like one bound would all it would take. And I didn't have my weapon right there. We would have been screwed. So that was so in that one. There's another time 2nd Platoon ended up with the mountain lion on the cop. It was up inside of. They made their own porta-john. So they constructed a little toilet with like 2 different doors and stuff in it. And I guess this like jaguar or a mountain lion like crawled up into the top of it, and the dog on the so Bowser ended up freaking out as one of the guys is going in. He's like barking and everything, and he goes to run into the toilet, and this cat just goes burning out and running out the EZP, and they were like, what the heck? They like to sit up in the eaves of things. I don't know if you've ever been down to Belize or anywhere like that. Always check your...
They like to jump down on you.
Always check your ceilings.
Yeah. Well, I mean, mountain lions in the U.S. are no different. They like to be on that first big branch, just waiting for something to come by, unwittingly underneath.
Yeah.
Well, then we also had over at Ware, there's the dirt floors in the tent, so we had snakes that would crawl under there. There's rats if you had any food. I mean,
camel spiders, good stuff.
Everything. Oh, the camel spiders. That was one of the Afghan. We had a new kid, and he comes with us up to one of the Afghan compounds, and the platoon sergeant's like, find a place for him. Like, up there, over there, they have this little tower, and there was a Afghan blanket on the ground, and it was cold. And the kid goes to snuggle up in the blanket. And we're like, whoa, stop, dude. And we're like, shake it out first. What do you mean, just shake it out?
Just do it. 3
camel spiders. Like, what was that?
Those things don't even look like they're from Earth.
No,
they don't. They look like the face huggers from the Alien.
I was just going to say, they could totally redo a modern day Aliens movie by using camel spiders.
Yeah, those things are and I mean,
freaky.
The worst thing is when you forget to check your boots. You're going 96-hour operations, so you got 2 hours of sleep in the last 96 hours.
You're not sharp,
and you just pull on your boot and you feel something
crunch,
and you're like, "Please God, don't let it be. Please God, don't let it be."
But it's still alive,
and
it tickles.
Sometimes it was a camel spider, and sometimes it was your socks balled up a little bit. Because you slept with them on.
Right.
But it immediately causes that. Oh, crap!
And then you jump through the ceiling.
Yes, especially if you feel it move.
I always shook my stuff out. I never ever had that issue. Thank God.
I mean, I did the first time I was in Afghanistan. On no subsequent trip did I ever do it.
It only takes once.
It only takes once. That is correct. That is correct. So. The natives were not the only thing that you had to watch out for. You also had to watch out for the wildlife.
Everything wanted to kill you out there.
When did you guys decide, or when did the unit decide? Okay, enough is enough. We're going to take the fight to them.
What do you mean by that? Because we were are you talking about the move into DK, Diakashe there? Yeah. Okay, that was as we're going, it's just constant figuring this thing out, and we were, so again, like I had started to go into before, 2nd Platoon was in the rear at Cop Johnston, to where we rotated through. We had been doing patrols from Cop Ware up to DK, but it was almost like every time, and this was explained later on too, every time we would try to go to DK, just multiple IEDs. Mm-hmm. Really what it was is that they had a ring, around... or they would just follow the patrol. So if you got in, then you'd have to cross back through this IED belt.
They'd follow you. And place them behind you. Yeah.
And again, the adage of never retrace your path back. Mm-hmm. And that was another thing. You always had to take the patrol maps that they had out there. There was overlays, and then you do a patrol. All right, we took this route. All right, you mark that route off. Okay, we're not going that way anymore. All right, and then by the end of it, there's just so many different overlays, but you had to be that way. You had to be so methodical in where you went because of this IED belt and the way that they would put stuff in. DK was really, I think they started recognizing the trends and stuff right around, there's a chapter in there, it's the Ides of March, and that talks about the suicide bomber with... Sergeant Thomas and Lee was 3rd Squad. We were in a T-blocking intersection. We had a KLE with super old guy.
Key leader engagement.
Yeah, I know. Should I put the acronyms in there for you? I have a glossary.
No, it's for the viewer and the listener. So.
I know. So we're meeting with this old guy out there, and it's I think we had maybe been 5 minutes. He was still sitting down with the chai and whatnot. And you hear boom, and you come out and there's just, somebody lit themselves off. 3rd Squad was just, but that was the last incident that it was like, okay, we need to establish something there. Like
Yeah.
everything is coming out of this town,
Mm-hmm.
constant bombs like through this area. Something's up over there, and that's where they decided to move 2nd Platoon out to
Yeah.
the DK area. And right around in that whole time is when we lost Sergeant Brunkhorst. Like, and again, like that's just that day was I mean, there's a period of 3 days, and that started off with Private Betts. He was one of the replacement kids, one of the first patrols he'd been on, and he's out with us, and he was 2 or 3 people in front of me, because I remember I was behind Specialist Cannon. Yeah, so he was 2 people in front of me. Cannon and then Betts. And we're walking along, and it's nighttime. We're headed back from a 3-day from Antenna Checkpoint, and this thing was it was like a muffled bang. It was like a boom, and we're just like, he goes down, he's screaming and stuff, and we're like, oh, what? You see the flash, it's night, but you don't know how big it actually was, but you're like, oh, it's kind of small. And we come up, and he's screaming bloody murder, like his leg is gone, and Doc is looking confused. I'm like, what's going on, man? Like, I already called up the location. Like, what's up? He's like, his leg's still there. What do you mean? Like, it was like, yeah, everything was intact. It was buried too low. And I guess it was, they had been irrigating the field, so it had taken on some water, so the full charge didn't go off.
Yeah.
And then that led to, we clear the HLZ, Bird comes in, takes him out. And right around that time is when, so because it was a 3-day, we were still going in, but Sergeant Hill took one of the other squads out. I think it was 2nd Squad. He took out to do site exploitation the next day. So we go in. I know I'm going back out the next day, when everybody comes out. And that morning, as the sun comes up, they start looking around them, and they're seeing like tripwires, and they're seeing freaking flags in the trees and everything else. And I have no idea how he cleared that HLZ without getting blown up.
Yeah.
Because me and, oh man, I think it was Martinick actually. He was the kid that we had that was with, was doing the FO stuff.
Is your 13 Fox?
Was an officer though, so yeah, it was
Power support officer?
No, he wasn't. It wasn't the officer
He
side.
was
It the
not.
enlisted
Okay.
side. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, the fisters. So me and him cleared, and yeah, I have no idea how we got that bird down and back out of there without getting completely annihilated.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Yep.
In stereo surround.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they wake up and all this is going on, and they have this other patrol coming out, with EOD from Cop Wares. We didn't have EOD with us. They're bringing EOD to them to do the site exploitation. They're recognizing all this. Lee goes to move forward to clear a path for this other team, and like as they're noticing all this, they're like, all right, we have a lot of work ahead of us to like go through all this today. And as he's moving with the metal detector, he jumps across this little section over this canal, and it had looked like it was those pathways, just those man-made little mound coming through, and they had built explosives into it, so it was actually built into the pillar system there, and it didn't
It's not a pressure plate.
It was, yeah. So like as soon as he hit it
Yeah. Okay. Then yeah.
it went off, but it wasn't, again, it was because the waterway was under there. It was sort of an amateur, like they were trying to figure out how to do things with, we would do a lot of patrols by water and by like mud and stuff, because how are you going to explode things? How are you going to get a charge through that? Again, that one, probably the luckiest landmine in Afghanistan, just broke his ankle. And then as they're moving to them, like we're talking mass confusion, because EOD is moving with one of the teams from one of the other squads. They hit a charge that fully went off, completely blows off Nick Edinger's leg. And right around that same time as they're medevacing him is when Sergeant Brunkhorst, there's an IED site that was set, but it was like a false IED site. So it was one, they would watch us.
It was a decoy.
Yeah, so it was a decoy.
It was the eye grabber. Pay attention to this so that you don't pay attention to this.
Yeah, and they had the real charges underneath where they watched how we did our site exploitation. So it was really meant for EOD.
Yeah.
And so because EOD was with us, Sergeant Brunk goes to check it out, moves into that position, and boom, just disappears. And that's when they call it Dust One. And these guys literally, man, like hands across Afghanistan, like in a minefield. Yeah, absolutely terrifying. I have no idea whose call that was, but guys with trash bags and stuff picking up pieces of Sergeant Brunk and putting it in their pockets, or in whatever they could find their assault pack. It was pretty brutal picture and stuff to come across and to think about and to have to deal with.
Yeah.
And y'all slept in place on that site, right?
I don't even know when, like, those 3 days, I don't even know. Like, we slept where and when we could. I know I was back at Cop Johnston for some of it. After Lee's, Hill came back in and grabbed myself up with a fresh squad, and we went back out to bring the battalion CO out there. So that's Lieutenant Colonel Guy Jones came out and was like, "What's happening here? You guys just lost like X amount in such a short amount of time. What is the situation here?" And it's like, we're in a freaking minefield.
Yeah. I asked about the sleep because there was an incident in the book, and I don't want to get him confused, but there were one of the missing body parts somebody had been laying on top of.
Yes, that was back with Johnston.
Okay.
Yep. And that's because that was like right before twilight and everything, and the sun had gone down at that point.
It's just dark. Yeah.
But yeah, just another one of those situations.
Unless you've been, people do not know how dark it gets out there. I mean, it's just ink.
Yeah.
Ink darkness. Yeah.
But after the casualties that you guys took across those 72 hours, that's when the chain of command decided, okay, we're going to approach this a little bit differently. We're going to make some things happen here.
I think they've been trying to adapt from the very start.
Right.
Kind of, how do you even adapt to a situation like this? And this is something to where nobody has kind of figured this key out anyway. We're getting there. And there was something that was brought up to me like during this and everything else, and I didn't put it in there, but they were actually, I don't think I put it in there. We were going to get pulled out. They were going to replace us. They were going to replace us with one of the other companies, and that's actually our commander and first sergeant were like, no, like this is at the point we can anticipate a lot of the movements and stuff. We've been operating in here. If you move somebody else in here, it's going to be a lot worse.
Yeah, it's just going to be a repeat.
And I think they did. They made the right call because, like, a lot of the guys, there was, we had been adapting throughout, but, like, those techniques of things, like, someone had one of the most ingenious ones was that someone was sent one of those little kids' fishing rods and stuff, and they had a lure set, and they were, like, shooting out and dragging across for trip
wires,
yeah. Because, like, where the stuff we were handed, the stuff we were fielded to defeat those mines, it wasn't. You were better off paying attention. The Talon system that they had on.
Yeah.
I think they were called the Talons.
There was the Talons and then the Thor system.
Yeah. Talon was a robot.
I was not a fan of the Thor system. I think that I don't want to spoil it, but your guys' approach to dealing with the Thor system was genius, and I can appreciate it.
Well, I mean, when you're experiencing headaches or you have these guys going down from, when a kid looks at you and he's like, you see him turn to his squad leader and he's like, "Sarge, I don't feel so good," and he's got blood trickling down his nose, and you're like, what kind of microwaves are these things putting out? And that's when the squad leader decided to render them inoperable.
Do you remember which? Sorry, go ahead.
When I was there in 0506, we were using what was called an acorn, and it was very similar. And let's just say we may or may not have inactivated ours as well.
There were at one point, I believe, 4 different systems with all the same intent. But I think Thor was the only contract that got renewed, because I want to say they at least got up to like the Gen 3 Thor. And I think that was the one that they ended up mounting on vehicles rather than in personnel, because...
it speaks for itself on that one.
Yeah.
I just remember they had a contractor come out who was supposed to tune them up. Like, it's been 6 months. Let's go out there and tune up all the acorns. And they came out. And I was in the command post when the contractor came in to tell my boss, like, "Hey, sir, they're all turned off." And all of us kind of look at each other around like, "Oh, wow. Who could have? Wow, who
That's
knew?
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. That's I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys moved into DK.
So yep, second platoon moved into DK.
Yeah. You guys said like this is ridiculous. This is enough. We're moving in and we're taking over.
And that is literally where you get the cover picture from.
Yeah.
That picture right there, we love how you did the cover. Yeah, well, we didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that picture was taken, somebody snapped that. So that was...
Yeah, the full picture's in the book.
Is the full one in there?
Yeah.
I know it's on social,
Yeah.
and I know I keep throwing it out there and stuff, just because it's I can't believe that somebody snapped that.
Yeah.
And then even more so, with all this, so that picture, and I'll just describe it really quick, is them pulling the American flag out of the rubble of the original Cop Brunk, because they had Cop Brunk 1 and then went into Cop Brunk 2, but they ran a V-bid, so a vehicle bomb.
Before that,
Mm-hmm.
after those horrible 72 hours, you guys decided to move into DK and you set up Camp Brunkhorst. Or Camp Brunkhorst. And how long had 2nd Platoon been there? Or I think at that point they had gotten relieved, right? The other one of the other platoons had just gotten there.
No, 2nd Platoon was there from the start, and they stayed there.
Okay, so how long had they been there before that VBED came in?
There are things with this to where there's just no actual timeline.
Yeah.
Again, like on how I had to do the timeline for the book to put it all together was the casualty reports.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, when did what's his name's alive day, and like go around and ask people.
Yeah.
And that's how we got the actual timeline, because it was so down and dirty, and you were always doing something to the fact that there was no way to tell an actual timeline.
No, I totally got you. Okay, so then go ahead and take us to the...
Yeah, so I mean that was over 1,000 pounds of explosives stuffed into a vehicle, and they just got it as close as they could. As soon as the vehicle started taking rounds, they lit it off and flattened the compound these guys were in, buried guys alive. They were lucky that we had over half the COP was evacuated just because of TBIs and everything else. The thing was huge. So my experience from that, and then taking it also from that particular incident, was shown through, I think it was Specialist at the time, Specialist Brian Erickson's eyes. He had been 1st Platoon, which is why I stuck with him, but also the unique fact that he was a firefighter during 9/11, and ended up, here he was at the start of the war, at the start of everything, and he finds himself in a bus crossing over into New York to help out, excavate and get to people in the towers. And then now here he is, years later, going through it and trying to get his buddies that are screaming under the ground.
Yeah.
To save them and stuff. And it was just, I thought that was absolutely, that was nuts to hear that end of it. But this picture is taken after they got the guys out and after they found the dead Afghan children and stuff. In there, they came across the flag during the recovery ops, and somebody snapped this picture as the guys pulled it out of the ground to raise it back above the compound and be like, "Hey, look, we're here to stay. Like, you can knock us down, but we're here to stay. You're not moving us." Just a really powerful picture. And then through this, once the guys actually found out that that's the picture that was being used, he reached out to me and was like, I have that flag. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, as we left that country, we replaced it with the unit that was coming in. I took it home. So now it's over at the Airborne Special Operations Museum, part of the DoD Historical Archives.
Yeah, downtown Fayetteville. Yep.
Yeah, which is, that between that, the flag from that, some of the stuff from the story with Lee with the suicide bomber, the magazine from there, some of the uniforms, the stuff I wore over, everything that I had that was kit that was worn in the Argondob, I brought all that down there and stuff. But there's been more guys that have come forward. I know Sergeant Muscle still has the grenade spoon from their particular story. And it's got the Cyrillic lighting, lighting and stuff on it and everything. It's like, man, the history behind this And he was using it as a keychain at one point for his
nice.
Jeep. Yeah.
That's the most 80-second thing I've ever heard in my life.
Right.
I kind of chuckle too. We're talking about this gear, people were wearing. How much? Totally a rhetorical question, I suppose. But how much of these artifacts that have been worn and this stuff just gets turned into CIF and then ends up, going into some warehouse like it's the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, never to be heard or seen from again.
Yeah.
Right. I even gave him that line from Indiana Jones. Yeah. And I was like, that belongs in a museum.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, let's move on. Because I don't want to spoil or ruin the book for anybody that might want to read it. But you guys ended up doing just over a year, right? Just over a year.
Actually, at a year. They needed to get us out of there and back to Kyrgyzstan before that lapse over and the funding changes.
It all comes down to this.
It does.
Of course. Well, yeah, I know. After a while, the Army changed its policy to where if you were there over 12 months. At 12 months and a day, you would start getting bonus pay,
and that is where they wanted to.
And
yeah.
Only a few units got that.
They also would deploy you at the beginning of the month, and then redeploy you at the end of the month.
Yep.
So you wouldn't get that extra.
Yeah.
Games. Yeah, games.
Yeah. So you guys were there for a year, and you spent how long in the Argonne?
Well, let's break it down. I think it was really only 7-8 months.
Still, the majority
more than half.
The majority of the
deployment. It was definitely more than half.
Yeah. Okay. So, what was the redeployment process like, and the reintegration once you guys got back stateside?
I mean, that was the whole. You could tell already just with the, the first sergeant kind of let off a little bit. They were allowed, 2 beers a day in Kyrgyzstan. And
yeah.
Oh, man, that changed.
Right?
Oof. We didn't get diddly, but that's all right.
Well, they probably shouldn't have, seeing, I think it was like after one day of it, like the first sergeant was like, man, come on, guys, this is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
But being back, in the rear, you get back, and they didn't let us go on block leave right off the bat.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, okay. And they're like, no. Like, you're holding back. You're in PT Monday morning. We're like, what? And they're like, no, we've got you guys in 2 weeks or so. Like, This isn't typical, but okay. And formation Monday morning, we're sitting there, and no one had told that they were doing the cannon. Now, that was not a thing.
Oh, the garrison, yeah.
Yeah, so when you're in garrison and that during the strike morning PT, it reminds me of Mary Poppins and that freaking dude. And, the entire formation, just hits the dirt.
Boom!
Yeah. Bam! Just
yeah.
And you look around and you see everybody, and, the first sergeant kind of cracks a joke about it and stuff, but you're realizing that you're like, man, like what we were in was just not... That is not something normal. It's not something that's going to take years to unravel for some people. And some people still are. Some people are still stuck in that perpetual trauma loop, which it's been good for me to put some of this stuff down. We were talking beforehand to where some of the things I wrote down, I actually need to go and reread some of this because some of it's gone. Some of my mind is just like at peace with it. And it's like, hey, you've processed this and you're fine with it now.
What was the reason that they held you guys for 2 weeks before they're releasing you guys onto block leave? I mean, I've from my experience, sometimes a few days, just to make sure all the equipment, everything is back where it needs to be. You've got accountability, all that stuff. I've seen that before, but 2 weeks is long.
I'm not sure if it was just because of they were trying to, we had a psychologist flown out to us at one point when we were over there. Yeah. In the Argonne. I don't know if it's just policies are changing at that point. You have a lot was going on within the Army at that point. I mean, you look at, the different policy changes. The fact that when we were over there, you had the removal of, our battalion commander. We had the removal of Stanley McChrystal. We had, it was almost like a witch hunt going through that end. People were losing their jobs. Policies were being changed. psychologist that was flown out to us. I'm sure there was others that had either seen them or, were already knocking on the door in Womack. I don't know, but I do know that, like, ultimately coming back around full circle and stuff, anybody that was with that unit during those times, like, they have an elevated rating from the VA, like, hey, this person was here at this unit at this time. They're a high risk unit. They're at a high risk for suicide. I've seen that across with a few others. I don't completely understand. I'm actually headed tonight towards an event to where I know somebody there that could probably answer a bunch more of that.
Well, it could be a lot of different factors just combined, whether it's a change of policy or a heightened awareness of some of the things you guys went through. It could be a combination of things. It's just 2 weeks just seems kind of long.
Purely anecdotal, but I did 2 deployments with the 82nd, and we did the same thing.
Okay.
It was weeks. It was go to the arms room, turn in your stuff. We're good, right? Nope. Come back for formation tomorrow, and then we had to do SRP, which for anybody watching is you have to go do all the medical stuff, go see the shrink, go get your shots, go do whatever, go get your teeth cleaned, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think they intentionally stretched it out because there's I'm not going to say this word right, but acclimatization taking place where you're physically, mentally, emotionally, all of the things.
The readjustment period,
and just kicking guys out the door after 72 hours. I mean, if I were the colonel in charge, I would have done the same thing, and people would have pissed and moaned about it, and it would have been all right.
Right, that's part of the burden of leadership too, though, is like realizing that exists, and you're like, hey, look, this sucks, and they're gonna freaking give me flack about it, but we're gonna save more guys this way. That board up on Bragg with the how many days since the last incident exists.
And at that time, the suicide numbers were climbing.
Oh yeah.
So I don't think they'd reached their peak yet, but they were steadily climbing, and units were definitely becoming more aware of.
It is crazy to see those where the correlations, and you start seeing the amount of deaths in war is like way down, but the suicides, like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
So can we take a minute to talk about that in regards to your unit after?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, what kind of numbers are we looking at?
Well, what the suicides wise? Oh man. Well, that's. So we had, I want to say the first major one, and the one that kicked off a few things was Sergeant Thomas.
Yeah.
And this is where, he found himself really without the proper support system. I kick myself sometimes for, I know I mentioned it in there, that I saw him at one of the gyms at one point. I could tell something's off. Mm. But you're like, he was my squad leader at one point. He's not going to want to hear anything from me, or, why would I reach out to him, kind of thing. Mm. But, who really knows? But, I mean, he was the first that I ended up committing suicide. But there's been, there's been others afterwards. There's Derek Hill, which is where they ended up, and I talk about in the book too, Operation Resiliency was sort of that response to that, and was response to some of these suicides, is like, hey, how do we get these guys back together? How do we, I guess, reignite that secret sauce to where we're better together than we are apart? That was something else that happened in COVID too. One of the other guys out there, he saw the correlation. He knew that there was going to be, there was already a spike in civilian suicides on that end, and he's like, I don't want to see any more friends killed. And he started up veteran peer groups, which was, all it was, and I noticed this right off the bat, and I was just like, holy crap, you took a mastermind format, which he did. He took one from a business mastermind that he was part of, and he changed around some of it to be for someone every day to come through in this format of the mastermind and talk about, hey, this is what's going on in my life, in a personal level, in a job level, and the professional level, mental health standpoint, and physical. And it worked in such a way to where those barriers that people put up in society, and they live behind, none of that was there, because we had already seen the best of and the worst of between each other.
Yeah.
So whenever someone had an issue in life that was bothering them and stuff, they had no qualms about talking about it in front of this group. And every time there was always 2 or 3 people that would either jump up and be like, hey, this is what worked for me, or hey, come see me sideline if you don't want to talk about this. But I've been through this before. And it just goes to show time and time again, like someone else is out there that is listening, someone gives a shit, someone cares about you. You just got to reach out and talk to people, and stay in contact with the people that you served with. Quite honestly, we are better together than separated or isolated.
Yeah.
We worked as a team for a reason, and it continues to work that way.
And I mean, who else could understand?
Yeah. I mean, it really is it is a veteran problem. That veteran to veteran thing. There are doors that you can breach and get beyond that other people can't.
Yeah. Which is part of what we're attempting to do here with this show. Is
part of why I'm here. I love what you guys are doing here. It's awesome.
So it's to raise awareness. I hate that phrase, but for our civilian friends to say, hey, there's a whole world out there that veterans we have, and the experiences that we're going through, and just kind of giving them insight into that. But it's also for us.
Yeah.
It helps us to talk about it with other veterans. But for people who have no real connection to the service or the veteran community, maybe by hearing veterans talk about it, they can better understand.
Yeah, there was things from this book have opened up so many different avenues. So case in point on that one right there, Johns Hopkins. Somebody reached out, so I've worked with the Maryland VA system quite a bit, having to do with crisis intervention management programs, because they were like, we don't know what we're doing with veterans. And crazy enough, yeah, I know.
It's crazy that they would actually admit it. That they would actually come out and say, whoa, we don't know what we're doing.
Admitting is the first step. Yes.
I mean, kudos to them, but that's not something you hear very often.
Well, it's the fact of there are so many people and there's so many organizations that are out there that want to help. They don't know how.
Right.
And there's a lot of us veterans, especially on the combat veteran side, that we don't want to talk about it, or we self-isolate and stuff, which isn't the answer either, because then how are they going to understand? Yes, trauma's trauma. Yes, your trauma was a little different than your standard norm, but there are ways of dealing with this, and we will eventually get there. But you have to talk about it.
Yeah.
And that was some of the things of dealing with the crisis intervention management, making myself available there. But also one of the ones was with Johns Hopkins University more recently, is they were talking about the implementation of EIP laws in Maryland. And
EIP being
exactly, and that's where I'm getting at with this. So I was like, what is this? So for anybody who doesn't know EIP, it's the red flag laws. So it's the ones to where it's like, hey, this guy's a danger to himself mental health wise. Hey, he's a veteran. Yeah, he's got a bunch of guns. We think he's a danger to himself and society. The guns need to be removed from his house, kind of thing. And I was like, whoa. And here they are thinking that is a good idea. I can't remember what state it was, but they were talking about the implementation of using, for every one of these warrants, SWAT. And I'm like, why are you going to use SWAT resources for that? All right, well, they're best equipped to get in there and get the guns. And I'm like, so you're telling me, do you know SWAT's SOP? And then you're telling me you're going to roll up on a combat veteran's house in what looks like an MATV, because they all have them now, and you're going to put 4 Bubbas in a stack outside his door at 4 a.m. for a hard knock, because that's what they do.
That sounds very California to me.
But they're doing it, and the thing is when this happens, and what's 4 o'clock in the morning for us? That's stand to.
Yeah. I mean, you've raised the ambient risk exponentially or geometrically, however you say it. Yeah.
But on the civilian side, when I explain this to them, and you start seeing these light bulbs go off, and they go, "Holy crap!" And it's like, yeah, we are trained. We did this type of thing. And when somebody goes down, because it's going to happen, it's going to end up in a firefight, and this guy's going to end up getting killed because these other guys are coming in with body armor and in a stack. Who knows exactly how it's going to play out? But it's going to be labeled as, hey, this was a win for the police department because we took a dangerous, veteran and mental health risk off the street. He was just ready to shoot somebody up. And it's like, no, that's not the case. You pushed him there.
Yeah, you poked the bear in the eye a dozen times.
Yeah.
and then you killed him.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Is it any wonder that he fought back?
But in being there and describing that and being able to show them the combat veteran side of it and going, hey, now what about this? What if it's somebody at around a lunchtime type thing that's plainclothes, that might be another officer who's a veteran who can speak veteran on that end.
Yeah.
Like, what's a better solution here on that end? You know, and it was very clear by the end of it, you know, and who knows what exactly will end up happening, but at least that information's out there.
Yeah.
And at least we're talking about it. It's something really relevant, especially today.
Yeah. Well, there's particularly Capitol Hill. I mean, there's fewer veterans, and lawmakers, lawyers, etc. Within the elite class of this country, there are fewer veterans now than ever.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's when you're going to start having that rub.
And even more so, there are fewer combat veterans.
Yeah.
A lot of the veterans that you see in political circles or upper echelon circles, they were JAG, they were logistics, they were somewhere else doing
which of
something
course
else.
Is fine.
I mean, there's nothing. There's
nothing.
I mean, everybody's service is important, but when you need somebody with experience, broad ranging, I mean, yeah, if you're going to talk about combat veteran issues, then you probably need to talk to a combat veteran.
A combat veteran somewhere.
And if you're going to pass a law that says that we're going to send SWAT to kick in your door at 4:00 in the morning and take your lawfully possessed weapons,
be ready. Yeah.
You might want to talk to a combat veteran beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. But all that aside, going back to the redeployment, all right? After every unit gets back, the unit starts getting picked apart. The Army sees guys with experience, starts taking some of the NCOs for promotion to take over their own platoons and their own companies elsewhere, or sending them to drill sergeant postings to train the next group of fighters, or recruiters to pick up the next group out of the local mall. They officers get promoted to XO positions elsewhere, or battalion commands,
off to school,
off to the career course or what have you. So how long after your deployment ended and you guys were back from leave, and you're doing your red cycle taskings or whatever, how long was it before that started, and you started noticing that there's fewer and fewer guys here?
So that's where I kind of fall into this weird little, like, after we got back, I sort of disappeared. During block leave, I went and did SFAS, which was during...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
It was a narrow timeline, and you just made it because you came on orders.
So I came on orders mid-deployment.
Yeah.
So I basically had called, SWIC and was like, hey,
yep.
I need to get this, or I'm going to have to wait another year. I'm going to be over at Lewis and this and that. So it was a do or die. I didn't have anything packed. Like, if I failed selection, I would have had a week to clear brag and sign in at Lewis. So it was, I'm making this no matter what. And quite honestly, like, after I got there and did it, I was like, man, probably should have done this with a busted leg before. But at the same time, perspective-wise, it was a lot different of a person after a deployment like that too, because it made SFAS freaking easy. Any day that I started getting the boo-boo lip and stuff about it, I was like, well, at least I got my legs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, after a year of eating dirt, mud tastes delicious.
Yeah. Yeah. McCall wasn't all that bad. I mean, it was. It's all about perspective. So yeah, I mean, they were still on block leave when I signed in to do that. One of the other squad leaders that I was with, Sergeant Ackers, he actually came with me, so I had a familiar face there. Unfortunately, he went down during team week. He tore something. I think it was his ACL or LCL.
Oof.
Oh yeah, it was during down pilot.
Oof.
Like, he just completely. I mean, he was a good dude too, and I was just like, oh my god, that sucks.
It's like Ranger School. It's just bad luck sometimes.
Yeah. I went forward, and So one of the guys there, again, he just sort of shielded me. It was Robert Muscle. He had taken over 1st Platoon because our platoon sergeant went down to be a black hat. Where you were saying everything just kind of redistributes throughout the Army. And he was like, hey, Yeske, look, man, like, you don't need to be here for what's about to happen. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, we got all these new kids coming in. Just go hide out. I'll call you if I need you. And I think I got like 2 calls. He's like, we need a for record PT test. And I came in for a ceremony. Like, that was the last, 2. And then it was sign in over there and start doing the Q course. And the rest of the Army career, that just ended up a lot of schoolhouse time. I learned a lot of things. Definitely did not go where I wanted to. Yeah. Not where I expected.
Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
The cool thing is, though, is like taking those frameworks, taking everything that I learned in there, whether it's the resilience from the SF side. We talked a little bit about this as I went over to the CA schoolhouse afterwards, and like taking those frameworks, taking the methodologies, and a lot of, after experiencing the CA selection in there, I didn't know what CA did. I was literally on this downward spiral funk because I was getting moved out of the SFQ course, and that had been everything I was, wanting to do. Mm-hmm. I found myself, just getting really down on myself, and I was like, when's the next selection? They're like, what do you mean? You're going worldwide. I'm like, just what's the next selection? They're like, we have CA starting in a week. I'm like, send me.
Great.
All right, fine. And I ended up going, but learning in meeting these people, the intelligence level, and kind of some of the things we did over there, I'm like, okay, like something is here. And I could really see that where that mission was, and it fit into everything that we did over in the Argonaut. I'm like, man, I really wish that some of this stuff was explored over there. I really wish we had an effective CA team with us. Would have been very different.
It's I love it because it's so complicated and weird.
It is very weird.
Well, a lot of people hate it for the very same reason. So
it takes a special sort of person.
Maybe I'm special as they come.
That's what his mom's been telling him since he was a little kid.
My mom tells me I'm handsome. Okay. So okay. So how does it all end?
How does it all end? I mean, that was. You have. Leaving that end, I ended up my last 8 months in the 82nd as a platoon sergeant, and of sorts, because it was really like a rear D company. It was strange.
Was 4th Brigade
gone?
And it was not inactivating. It was gone at this point.
It was gone. Okay. I think it was like after the 12 deployment, they got back from that one, and it just see you later, 4th.
So for everybody listening, all of the 4th Brigades across the Army within the infantry divisions all went away.
Yeah, they just got reintegrated into really, from what I understand, it makes more sense to the structure that they're going with, just on how it works. Yeah. So it's just what they do.
So you back to division, where again?
This one was, where did I end up in the last one? What's Panther? Oh my God, is this 507? I don't even know at this point, because I ended up at 504 for one point. Oh, 505. Okay.
504 is the only brigade, but we allow the 505 to exist.
Such an elitist.
They're all. I mean, it's you say 508 or and they all Fury and
Fourth Brigade was always the stepchildren, though. I mean, it's
big time.
Would you agree with that characterization? Yeah.
They're still 2 Fury is like the whipping boys of division. I'm just like, what is? I went into their little their cough down there, and I'm just like, what is this? Man, you guys are still getting handed the end of the stick. Yeah.
So they put you in Panther, and you just kind of closed out over there.
Yeah, I'm glad I did, just due to some of the things that I learned over there and stuff. And I ended up helping out. One of the other kids. This was it was a situation to where something wasn't right, and I had felt that something wasn't right before, and I reached out. This kid was on staff duty one night, and I'm like, hey man, so what are you gonna do? I think he had 3 weeks left or something. What's your plans? And he was like, I don't know. I'm like, dude, normally everyone's ecstatic. Come on, man. There's no one else here. Nah, I'm just, we're still trying to figure it out. I'm still doing some office work. Come back down. And he broke down. Like, we just talk, and he started breaking down about it and come to term, like, he hadn't done anything to clear. 3 weeks left to go, nothing cleared, nothing on the checklist, had no plans, and was literally just, I got busted down and ranked to a 4, and I'm going to go home one of these nights, and I'm going to freaking blow my head off. And I'm just like, okay. Like, facing that, what do you do?
Yeah.
And I was like, look, I've heard this before. I've heard this from other people. It's like, if you're going to do it, like, you've made up your mind. Like, there's nothing I can do or say that's going to change that. But if I walk with you across the aisle, if I try to help you out here, will you give it a shot? And he was like, yeah, I'll try. I'm like, all right, let's go see First Sergeant. And I called First Sergeant.
It's the old ace card.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wrong answer, though. Like, I go into First Sergeant's office, and I'm like, without him in there, and I explain the situation, and he looks up at me, and he's like, yeah, that's going to be a problem. And I'm like, what? He's like, get rid of him. He's yours now. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, he's your problem. Get him out processed and get him out of here. Yeah. And I was like, okay, yeah, roger that. And I turn and I walk out, and I'm like, come on, man, we're going to see Sergeant Major. And I walked down to Sergeant Major, got the kid the help he needed, got him the answers he was looking for, and then on top of it, he had no idea that because of his situation that he was in, he just needed to, like, stop a moment, because he still had, like, 72 months on contract. I'm like, they still owe you all that money. What? Like, so he walked out with, like, 70 grand in pocket, to go start a new life down in Florida, and all just because of, like, it just took
a conversation that he had on staff duty one night.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, it's never as bad as I really learned in that instance. It's never as bad as you think it is. There are people out there, that'll help you, and that care. You just need to stop and take a breath.
Yeah.
And reach out.
Yeah. You're never going to know unless you ask, right?
Yeah. But I mean, all this stuff, everything happens for a reason, and some people are like, man, like, that really sucks about your career and stuff. I'm like, I was there for a reason. Like, something happened there. Something was instilled there.
Yeah.
So, hey, that's just how you got to look at it.
How did you feel about getting out?
I kind of kept my foot in the door when I left too. I joined up on the reserve side, but then I got that kicked in the teeth for doing so, because what is this, like 6 months after I was out, I got the letters from the VA, and they're like, hey, you're deadlined. And I'm like, well, I'm in the reserve, so how does that work? And they're like,
They're like, not anymore, you're not.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what I would think, right? So I go over to the reserve unit, and I'm like, hey, I just got all this stuff back, and I'm freaking need to come off jump status and everything else. And they're like, oh, well, that sucks. I'm like, so when am I gone? And they're like, I don't know, when your contract's up. I was like, what? So I did like 2.5 years unpaid in the reserves, which was a real...
Okay.
I don't even know that's...
Some senator somewhere down the line, I'll take care of it, but
I don't know.
I don't care at this
Good
point.
gracious.
Yeah.
So how long after your time in active service did you start thinking about the book?
This didn't come out or really come to, it had always been something in the back of my head, and I mentioned there, I think in the author's note about it, is that as we were getting second squad ready to, I think they were the ones that flew out, as we were getting ready to leave for one of the patrols, because I remember exactly where I was. I was at the ECP on Cop Johnston, and Sergeant Muscle jokes with me, and he goes, guys, one day we're going to see a book with Yeske's name on the front cover, of all this stuff. And I'm like, there's no freaking way.
That's called foreshadowing.
It's called manifestation somewhere. But yeah, I mean, here we are. It really ended up, though, there was another book that came out. There was another author, and it was during the original Operation Resiliency that came out. He was writing an article for the Wall Street Journal, and it ended up turning into a...
And this was what year? What year was the first Operation Resiliency, and he came out?
That was 19. So 5 years ago. And they had him out there, talking to a few different people and stuff. And the article was great from the Journal. But somebody over at, I think it was Abrams Books, hit him up and was like, there's a story here. He was like, I'm a Marine. Like, you got to be kidding me. But he got pushed into it, and he wrote Bravo Company by Ben Kessling. And it was leading up to the release, to where a lot of the guys, there was starting to be like, oh, he's a journalist. Oh, he's a reporter. Oh, that guy could have never freaking written about that. And I'm like, well, who talked to him? Like, I talked to him. I talked to him at length. Like, I kind of feel that I understand. Like, I wouldn't have fully gone into everything talking to him if I had thought that that his heart wasn't in the right place, and that he wanted to give the best accurate picture. And come to find out, like, a whole bunch of people hadn't talked to him, like, and they're the ones that are griping the loudest about it. And I'm like, so why don't you write a book?
Yeah.
Like, you gotta be kidding me. So that's when I called Ben, and I was like, hey, like, what are your thoughts? You've heard my end of the story. Some of the guys are griping about this and that. Like, what are your thoughts? Should I put this stuff down? And he was like, no, go ahead. Absolutely. Everybody deserves their own story out there. And he was the one who actually pushed me ultimately to put this thing down on paper. Other than that, that was the extent of it. And so I sent multiple manuscripts, but the guy's got like 5 kids and was working for the Journal at the time. So who is this freaking dude? I can't read this stuff right now.
Well, how receptive were your fellow guys,
fellow paratroopers?
Yeah, to you doing it versus somebody they didn't know doing it.
At first, there was that hesitation. Like, what makes you think you could do this? You're not a professional. Like, yeah, you were there, but like, and there was initially like a little bit of just griping, and the same thing. Like, I just put it out there, like, well, why aren't we doing it? If this is your problem, there's already this other book out there. Why aren't we putting something together? And it ultimately just ended up having to do, like, this is a chapter out of what my thoughts are for this.
Yeah.
And stuff. And it ended up everything along the way. I know there's still like guys out there that haven't read the book. And there were some that were hesitant to read the book because the other book sent them into one of the guys in particular sent them into a rage, and they never even finished the other book. They threw it across the room, and there it laid until their wife picked it up and put it up somewhere. And
just because they didn't like the way something was represented, or
or
it just reliving the events.
Again, and that's why I wrote all this in the author's note. I honestly think that a lot of it, one of the guys had said it, Jared Lemon, he was one of the guys that ended up losing an arm during all this. But he had the perspective that he's like, everyone's wrapped up so emotionally, like in this. Definite trauma happened during all this, and you're looking at something that was life-changing for every single one of these guys. So they're holding that. You're challenging their outlook of what happened. You're challenging their emotions, and whether they're reliving that end or whether it's not exactly how they remember it, who really knows? But it's triggering them. Yeah. And even this thing with some of the guys reading through the way I wrote it, and I wrote it from, I think I really only go to a high school level. I tried to keep it an easy read. I didn't want to use big words because, infantry. It was for them. It was really for the guys that were there. But then, when you start pulling apart the purpose of it, you're like, well, anybody can read this. Kids looking to join up for the military from high school, they can read that end and see, like, this is what war is. This is what you're going to face out there. Somebody asked me on a more recent interview, what do you think someone like you or, with your book could do to help with the military recruiting crisis? I'm like, have you read this thing? I don't think it's our duty to do anything with a recruiting end of things. It's our duty to show, hey, this is what war entails. This is what you're getting into. If you're unsure of yourself, or that's not anything you want to be a part of, then stay off the battlefield. You're just a liability. And
I think that's just it. It's honest.
Yeah.
It's a brutally honest book.
There's the whole, oh, my recruiter lied to me bit.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. But this is not that. This is, what happened. And I think you mentioned earlier that it's not just from your perspective.
Yeah.
You incorporated other guys' perspectives as well.
That's where I really think it took off,
and,
too.
Yeah. And you could say it how you want, but I mean, it's written like an enlisted man would write a book.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't tend to like to read books about Iraq and Afghanistan because I'm personally connected, right?
Yeah.
And it's too, I love history, but that's too near for me. And I really enjoyed your book. It was really good. It was really well written. And some amazing and heartbreaking stories, but it made me think about a lot of things that I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, and it will. That's one of the biggest things with this. And there's chapters I wrote with tears streaming. There's people that have, gone and asked, "Hey, do you think you can do a reading at this event?" And I'm like, "No,
Nope.
I can't. I'm sorry."
Yeah.
There was even an author. She does an author podcast, and she, asked if I would read the Johnson story, and I was like, "Heck, no."
No, that would be rough.
I cannot read this on there. And she was like, "Well, would you mind if I did?" I'm like, "Good luck."
Go for it.
And you could hear, and she is a civilian. You could hear her, like she had not read this portion before, or if she did, she was just like re-getting back in, and she was like choking up, just trying to read it. And I'm like, it pulls on stuff, and it does. Like guys have called me saying like, "Hey, I'm getting cravings to smoke. I've been sober for years, and I want to pick up a drink." Or they're sitting on their couch and they're like, "Why do I smell the crap water from Afghanistan? Like, what is going on?" And that, like, those triggers are built in there. And it was one of the things I worried about during all of this. I'm like, I don't want to be the cause of something else. But at the same time, it's beautiful in the way that it's having the stuff bubble to the surface, but it's enough to where you can put it down, you can put it away, you can talk to somebody, you can call a friend.
Yeah, I did. I had to put it down 3 times.
Yeah.
There was some. I read it pretty quickly, but there were certain points in there where I was like, I've got to put this down. And I called you a couple of times.
Yeah.
And it'll definitely bring some things to the surface. I mean, good stuff too.
Yeah, it's all of it.
I thought about a couple of people in particular from my second deployment that I hadn't thought about in years. One I called almost immediately, and the other guy I was like, I don't ever want to think about this guy again. So
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
There's the good and the bad.
Yeah, I joke about the 82nd thing, but as a former 82nd guy, like I could hear, see, and smell
division,
everything that you wrote in that book. Like, it took me back, and there's a lot of stuff that I've put behind me, and I don't mind. I was ready for it. Because I believe in staring into the skid,
I'm the exact same. But even then with some of this caught me by surprise, but the real beautiful thing of one of the stories in there, one of the guys is no longer with us because he came down with Lou Gehrig's, crazy enough, from exposure. I mean, that's another thing like out there. We're all exposed to different stuff too.
God knows what.
Yeah. Especially what you were talking about, like Anaconda and everything else. There's a reason why places like Hunter 7 and stuff exist.
Yeah.
But to be able to portray a story of something that only happened between him, and the Lieutenant Demarest, that right there is so cool that I can keep that memory there and keep that person alive, like in that way.
Yeah.
That right there is something special to me. That that's that, like, we solidify, that legacy or that person in there, and they're always going to remember. They're always, these people are written into history now.
Yeah.
And not something I would have ever thought that was the mission to start with.
Posterity.
Yeah. And I mean, again, that's why we're doing what we're doing. You have preserved those memories, good and bad. And that's what we're trying to do. I mean, you allowed them to get it from multiple perspectives in the book and to tell their story in their own words. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah,
because
amazing.
What are you going to do? Let Hollywood write another Fury movie? It's right.
Dan's looking at me. He knows he knows this is my.
It's his favorite movie.
Just so quick thing, the Brad Pitt movie. Have we talked about this
exactly
on microphone? We've talked about it.
We've talked about it.
We've talked about it offline, but one of the main reasons why I wanted to be a part of this is because that movie infuriated me so much because it's all complete horse, you know what?
Yeah.
It's like we had millions and millions of men under arms that went off to go fight in World War II, and we're making a movie about a completely and utterly fictional movie about. I'm going to start cussing. So that was one of the reasons why we wanted this, because
you have something like this, same thing.
Yes,
you know?
And I'm glad that our generation has learned from our forefathers, who many of them came home and suffered in silence and didn't come home and tell their stories because it was stoic or whatever. They have their reasons. It is what it is. But I'm glad that our generation is trying to learn something from that.
Yeah.
Same.
I mean, you had the veterans from World War I and World War II, and they, they suffered in silence, or they were stoic about it. They went and they did their job. They came home, saved the world, whatever. And that was that. And then Korea ended up being right around the corner, and everybody just had war fatigue.
Yeah.
So they kind of felt like, well, nobody really cares. The forgotten war, right? Mm-hmm. And then after that, Vietnam. And Vietnam left a wretched taste in everybody's mouth, so that the veterans felt like nobody wants to hear my story because I'm gonna get fired.
Yep.
I'm gonna get crap thrown at my door. I'm gonna be booed in the street. So I'm just gonna forget about all my service, and I'm not gonna talk about it at all to anybody. And it took a long time before people were really willing to talk about our service or talk about their service. And now we're getting to that point again where, for whatever reason, veterans just feel like they're not being heard, and that's why we're here. So, I mean, tell your story to somebody. It doesn't have to be us. It doesn't have to be in your book or anybody's book, but tell somebody about it.
Well, you were saying too before. I mean, we were talking about it just before. The fact of the involvement of veterans in government and stuff. There's the least amount of involvement, and even more so from the combat end of veterans. Like, what's left there?
Yeah.
There's a lot of money to be made from war. And there's a lot down that end too, and we need those checks and balances. We need people that are willing to talk about it and be like, hey, like, this is, what was the end of Afghanistan? It started out with people jumping out of the towers, and it ended up with people falling off planes onto a freaking runway.
Yep.
Like, it's people falling from the sky. That's how.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to ask you the same question that we close with everybody.
Oh.
Would you do it all over again?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That is, without a question of a doubt, that right there where people are like, oh, the things that happened to you guys and this and that. I'm like, no, I'm glad that stuff happened. I'm glad it happened. I'm glad it happened to me, because that's instilled a reason. That's instilled a purpose. That guy who said, hey, you live in... I don't know if I said this before, but I now live in a county in Maryland that's the highest veteran suicide rate within Maryland. There's a reason that is. I don't know yet everything behind it.
Yeah.
But if I have this purpose instilled in myself to try to get guys to share their story, to create a community around this stuff, to help each other, there's a reason I'm there.
Yeah.
You don't always know. You don't always know the reasons or why the universe puts you in a place that they do. But we were there in the Argonaut for a reason. You just don't know yet.
It's too soon to say sometimes.
Yeah. We are still, even now, too close to it to really know.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
It's going to be quite some time before we know. So.
Well, we can't thank you enough for coming on. Months in the planning, in the making, so we certainly appreciate it.
It finally happened.
We appreciate you being vulnerable.
Boom.
And telling the story. It's not easy.
No, it's not, but this stuff has to be said.
It does indeed. It does indeed.
Perfect.
And you did a great job doing it. Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it, man. Really
Thanks
do.
for having me, guys. Thank you.
Well, what do you think?
It was gritty. It was real. It's a great book for starters. And you and I both, read and/or audiobook the book. I mentioned it while we were talking to him how glad I am that we have members of our generation who are willing to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
again, I mentioned it in here as a former 82nd guy. The book was so real in the prose and the narrative that it was written in a, you know, in most ways a first person narrative. It was so real. I was actually getting the taste in my mouth and the smells and some of the sounds, feels. Mm-hmm. If that's what he was going for, he succeeded.
Yeah, there were, like I said, there were places I haven't thought about in a long time, and there were people that I hadn't thought about in a long time that while I was reading the book, it came up. And I don't like reading current, you know, historical narratives. Yeah. I think that it's best to be a bit further removed to something, rather than reading something that you are so closely connected with after, you know, spending years of my life in Afghanistan. It was tough to get through, but it brought back good memories and bad. And yes, it was an easy read because of the style in which it was written. And you could feel it again. Yeah. I mean, you could feel, you know, the sand in your uniform. Mm-hmm. You could feel the weight of the radio man pack. Yeah. You could feel the moon dust underneath your boots. It's
the smell of the sweat. Yeah. And the gunpowder. Yeah. And the dust. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it was very, very real. It was very real, and it was, again, not a difficult book to read, but it still took me a few days to get through because there were times when I had to put it down because I was getting in my feels.
Yeah. I didn't think you had any of those left.
I do a little bit. I do a little bit for my comrades in arms, but he's done a great job, and he has some other works that are pending. Yeah. And if he does half as good a job with those ventures as he does, or as he did with Damn the Valley, it's going to be great. Yeah. And I mean, not everybody, pretty much most careers do not end the way people initially set out for them to. And his was no different in that regard. But he still had a memorable career full of memorable experiences that he'll, for better or worse, never forget. And he went out and wrote a book about it, about his experiences, and used his fellow paratroopers' experiences to create a book that is hard, but easily digestible to everybody. Yeah. And I mean, that's part of what we're trying to do, is to bridge that gap between the civilian and the military. And this book will do that. Yeah. This book will do that for a lot of people. So he did a great job.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good.
Like I said, this stuff hits a little bit close to home, so it's harder to remain objective, I guess. Yeah. I would recommend it. I would recommend it. It's there's going to be parts that are not so easy to read, or so easy to handle, but I would definitely recommend it to people. Yeah.
Will is in the same frame of mind of us in that we're capturing these for posterity. Mm-hmm. Check. We're telling these veteran stories. Check. And then, again, the prose in which it's written is very digestible, gritty and real, but digestible. Yeah. For veterans and non-veterans alike. So.
Yeah. He did a really good job. Yeah. I'm happy for him, and we will keep. Yeah. We will keep you posted as he has upcoming events, whether it's book signings or speaking engagements, or hopefully he'll have some release dates for his. He said he's got 2 books in the works.
Yeah, couple additional projects.
So hopefully he'll be able to.
If anybody knows any managers or agents for publishers, things of that nature, who would be interested in working with Will, reach out to us and we'll be happy to facilitate a link up, because he is in the market for an agent. So.
Yes, and he's definitely talented enough to really make the best out of it. So,
sure.
It's good stuff.
Yep.
Good stuff. All right.
I know it's coming.
Do you?
I do.
What's coming? It's free fire time.
It is indeed.
It's free fire time.
How did I know?
All right. This is something that I've been thinking about, and I'm gonna put it to you this way. What is a technological advancement over the last, say, decade that you think is just fantastic? Like no fault in it, or the upside
far outweighs
the downside.
10 years. The thing that immediately comes to mind for me, and I'm not a space geek. There are people who it is their passion and hobby to follow this stuff. Mm-hmm. I am not one of those, so I will be out of my depth talking about this. But to answer your question, the Falcon SpaceX, the fact that they've been able to figure out how to reuse these boosters over and over and over again, as opposed to the past, where, as far as I know, it was all basically one and done.
Yeah.
So the economy behind that, which means now we're not spending, and it's a private enterprise, right? At least I know that SpaceX has received a ton of government funding, so it's not purely a free enterprise, but
right.
The space program that he is running over there is changing things for the I don't see how there are any downsides to us being able to revolutionize space travel in that fashion.
Okay.
Not to mention the fact that they figured out how to actually like land these things, which is mind blowing to me. I think they did one a few years ago on a floating barge out in the ocean. So not only are they landing these things, which was unheard of before, but they're doing it like with the swells out on the ocean.
Okay.
So
all right. Well, here's the twist.
Okay.
That's going away.
Okay.
But you also get to pick a piece of technological advancement over the last decade or so that you absolutely hate and see no upside to, or less upside and more downside.
So again, initially, my response is going to be AI, and I know that AI is a vast trove, and we're only kind of talking about the margins here, but I think we're cracking into a piece of technology that we don't really fully understand. Mm-hmm. There will be upsides to it. I think there's some things in medicine. I think there's some things, particularly in things like radiology, these machines being able to read X-rays and MRIs better than trained physicians, things like that. But I think the job displacement that is going to be created by AI is something that we're not really prepared for. And this usually happens when you're on the seam of a sea change. You know, for example, when we went from the agricultural revolution to the industrial revolution, there was vast displacement that was created during that time. And all the free marketers can say, oh, creative destruction, it's all wonderful. And okay, but there's a lot of destruction involved in that too. And you know, there's a human toll and cost to that. Same can be said for the industrial revolution changing into the information age. I think now we're still in the information age, but we're just starting to scratch the surface on what this technology is even capable of, and I don't think we're really ready for it. And it opens up the door also to all the ethical and moral questions that. What is it? Dr. Ian Malcolm says in Jurassic Park. You know, you spent all this time thinking about whether you could do something and not whether you should.
Yeah.
I think we might be in some of that territory with this stuff, and that's kind of where I'll leave that.
That is quite profound. Well said.
Thank you.
Well said.
So how about you?
Nowhere near as deep or profound.
Excellent.
The tech that I would say has more upside than downside. Text messaging. The answer is pretty simple. It's brief, or it's intended to be brief and quick and instantaneous. Mm-hmm. But the downside is that it has replaced actual interaction with people. It has replaced the phone call. So rather than calling your grandmother who's sick in bed, and is 90 years old or what have you, now you're not calling her and talking to her, you're texting her. Things like that.
Yeah.
I think the upside is definitely better for quick communications, quick messaging, sending pictures, files, what have you. I think all that is fantastic. Yeah, sure. But there is a downside, and I don't think people see it. I think the downside is pretty big, and it's the collapse of personal communication.
Yeah.
But there is, I think, the upside definitely.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We've started using emojis so much now, and it's kind of weird that it's almost like we're going in reverse order now. It's like we're going back to hieroglyphics now. And the written word, and it was the way we were able to communicate complex thought, and it's like we've gone backwards.
Yes.
Now
and now there's faces, and you can string together like 6 small pictures that people can decipher as a complete paragraph.
Those are called hieroglyphics.
Yes. And just like, an ancient tomb in Egypt, you're seeing the same thing.
Yeah.
So yes, that's, the lack of communication, but the instantaneousness of it and the brevity of it and the quick efficiency of it, I think is more of an upside.
Okay.
So that's the positive.
Yep.
The negative that I would get rid of. This is all very technology based.
Well, we're in the information age, right?
CGI.
Okay.
CGI has destroyed films. Originally it enhanced films. It was more expensive, but overall it was more efficient. And now it just makes everything look superficial and fake.
Yeah.
It does not. It has taken.
It's a crutch now.
It has taken. Yes, it has taken the realism out of the film industry. And why do you want to see something if you can't believe that it's real? Even something so superficial as just the way it looks.
Yeah.
I think that it may have started with more upside, but the downside has definitely outstripped the upside.
Yeah. I think the movie, right? So the 60-minute to 2.5-hour full feature film.
Mm-hmm.
It's an American art form. It was created by us. You can argue us and the Germans ultimately, but we perfected it. We really made it into what it is, and I think in a lot of ways it's a dying art form. I think the rise of streaming has created a market for long form storytelling, also known as a series.
Mm-hmm.
And people are more interested now, and I don't know if this is even arguable if you look at the numbers. People are more interested in a long form story through a series versus a 2-hour spectacle.
Well, I mean, and what you're seeing, it may be sort of to combat that, is you're seeing movies being released in part 1, part 2.
Yeah.
So it'll be a 2 hour and 30-minute movie, but that's part 1. And then, next quarter, part 2 comes out.
So it sounds to me like you're talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe or whatever is probably the best example, right?
Well, no, I mean, like specifically Dune, the Dune series remake that's coming out. And then Kevin Costner has a new one new Western.
Waterworld 2, Electric Boogaloo.
I would go see that. But no,
Speaking of spectacles.
It's an American Western. It's called like Horizon or something like that.
I'm not familiar with it.
But the first part is coming out soon, or just came out, and then in a couple of months, the second part is coming out to continue the story. And I don't know, there may be 3, 4, or 5 parts. But whereas it used to take years for a sequel to come out,
sure.
Now they filmed this thing, the entire Dune franchise. You can look at the Lord of the Rings franchises, both the Lord of the Rings as well as the Hobbit trilogy.
Best
that they
trilogy ever made.
They were all filmed together, and it's just their releases are spaced out.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the way that, long form series
Sure.
were being consumed. But I still think that CGI has destroyed the filmmaking.
As a novelty, it was agreed.
Yes.
Used as a way to enhance something, and then we can't have. This is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah. So now, instead of actually going to a location and shoot and whatnot, we're just going to throw up CGI, green screen, and all this other stuff.
The best example I could think of is, what was it? Mid 2000s, I guess. The Beowulf movie that came.
that could have been so good. And I mean,
so much potential, right?
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad, but yes, being all superficially. I mean, they had the actors and actresses in there, but there was then, I don't know, glossed over with CGI or something like, or enhanced.
It's a whole movie of Uncanny Valley. Which, if you don't know what it is, look it up. It's the thing that when you see an image that almost sort of looks like a human but not quite, and you get that shiver up your spine, that's the Uncanny Valley.
Keanu Reeves did one like that a long time ago. Through a Mirror Darkly, something like that.
Not familiar with it.
It was weird. But so I think through all 4 points that we made, we can say that technology is the devil, the bane and boon of our existence.
I will see you at the old sawmill later. Yes, thank you.
The bane and boon of our existence. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed our discussion with Will Yeske. We realized that this content was a bit more graphic than some of the other discussions that we've had.
Yep.
But here at Tracer Burnout, it's veterans talking veterans, telling their story in their words, and that is exactly what he did here and what he did in the book.
So, he's now a friend of the show, so we'll do our best to keep you up to date on what he's up to with his book tour and anything else he may have coming up. So, appreciate everything. You can, as always, you can catch us on all social media, so Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn.
Yep.
We're also on Twitter, X, YouTube and Rumble, and then all the podcast networks. So we appreciate all that. Please check out our website, tracerburnout.com.
And if you want to get a hold of us and maybe sit down and talk with us yourself, you can email us at info@tracerburnout.com.
So thanks again. And as always, your service matters.
This is Simus. And mine. OP. That's what we're watching. For the enemy. Absolutely.